Hi, folks. I'm just waiting for some board members to join us before starting the meeting. I just wanted to call folks' attention to the estimated start and end times that we have in our agenda and let folks know that an agenda item might not come up for them for a while. All right. Just in respect for everyone's time. Otherwise, if you're here for our whole meeting, welcome. That's also great. Okay, 6:30, but Claudette can turn her camera on if she hasn't already. There she is. Okay, so I'll just wait one more minute for Marcia and okay. All right, so board members are here. I'm going to get started. Rod Francis is not yet with us, but I'm sure he'll join soon. Oh, there he is. All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, welcome everyone. It is Wednesday, February 23rd. It is 6:31. This is a regularly scheduled select board meeting. This is a remote only meeting. My name is Roger Arnold. I am joined by board members Mary Layton, Vice Chair, Robert Geer, Claudette Brochu, and Marcia Calloway. We also have with us our town manager, Rod Francis. Okay. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I'll just say for folks who are joining, it's wonderful to see everyone. Our agenda has estimated start and end times on it. So if there is an agenda item of particular interest to you, please know that it might be coming, it might be a while, right? We have some other items first. So I just wanted to say that in respect for your time. But if you're here for our whole meeting, that's awesome. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion for that?
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, so a second. Okay, I saw Rob. So made by Mary, seconded by Rob. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a public comment for any item that's not on the agenda, we welcome it. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Great. Are there any select board comments? I just want to thank Mary for her work in posting to the listserv with all the informational material for town meeting day. It's been a very disciplined posting. It's appreciated. Okay, anything else? All right, so then we'll move on to the consent agenda. All right, so when we approve the consent agenda, we receive correspondence. With thanks, we approve the warrants, and we also approve the meeting minutes from the dates that are listed there. All right. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Obviously, there's much correspondence that may be relevant to a later agenda item, so we may not need to pull that.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Rob. Rob, you've been on mute, just so you know. I see your peace sign.
Second.
Made by Mary, seconded by Rob. I think it's appropriate to say that in one of the meeting minutes, I took the notes. I was working from a previous template. It says Rod Francis Durfee. Obviously, that is very wrong. So we'll fix. Please, I'll send that to Miranda to fix. Anyway, go ahead, Marcia.
So under number 7, all of the consent agenda items that are submitted will be brought forward or allowed to proceed, correct? I'd like to bring them forward if it's necessary to bring them forward.
I can't imagine that they won't be discussed as part of that agenda item.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, wonderful. So the next item is the presentation of discussion of the audit. We are shockingly efficient, so our auditor may not yet have joined us. I'm looking in the chat and not seeing them. Rod or Fielding, any insights here? I'm going to add you. I'm going to pin you. Ah, there she is. All right, so let me now just look for her name to pin. All right. So Bonnie Batchelder, you're the town's an independent auditor. Thank you for joining us. You arrived right at the perfect cue for a presentation and discussion of your report. Hopefully you're hearing this and you see that as a cue to begin.
I do hear you, and sorry, my camera's not working. Not really sure what's going on. I'm not trying to hide from you.
It's okay. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the audit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there specific questions regarding the audit?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Mary Layton.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. On note 3, cash and equivalents, page 23. I was wondering, thinking about how the tax payments come into the finance department and then are sent over to the bank and subsequently used for operations of the town and the school, and was seeing that the collateralization through a standby letter of credit through Mascoma Bank is at $8 million. But I'm wondering how that works. If the total budget, school and town, it is 18.6 for fiscal year 22 and 19.3, is the thinking that half of that money comes in because our tax payments are split? And also, is the level of collateralization high enough? Should it be 9 million or 9.5 million? If it is,
yeah, I mean, it's usually determined on what the average balances that you have, that you could be exposed to during the year. So
okay.
it does make sense that there are times during the year that you do have that amount of exposure. It's usually set by the bank based on questions and information that the treasurer feeds the bank. So that may be something that you want to revisit to make sure that the town is not overprotected because of the fees, but that you are adequately protected.
And to your knowledge, since this, I think, would be mainly a problem when money is sort of flowing through, would you happen to know whether, like, we could have collateralization, for instance, for, a month-long period during which most tax receipts would be received, either in the winter and then in the summer? Do you know? Or that would just be a question for the bank?
Well, it's a good question for the bank, but normally the collateralization agreements are created and signed once a year.
I see.
So it's not something that's done on a rotating basis, on a monthly basis. It's usually established and signed by the select board and once a year, or with the treasurer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Does anybody else have any specific questions?
See Marcia's hand. Go ahead, Marcia.
Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Bonnie. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, at the beginning of your letter on page 1, you say you make no opinion as to the effectiveness of the entity's internal control. Can you explain more about what that means?
So keep in mind, this is a letter that is established by the American Institute of CPAs, and it's a form letter that we have to be able to put all of this information into. But basically what it says, we're auditing the financial information. We're not necessarily auditing all of your internal controls. We test your internal controls to be able to plan the audit and the level of auditing that we need to do to be satisfied that the numbers are fairly stated. So an audit of internal control would be like, we're going there and we're documenting and looking at every control that you have. It's a separate service, basically. Okay. So we test it, but we cannot say based on our tests that we are auditing it. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does.
But we definitely do sample, and I kind of give this spiel every year, is that we pull your check register, your payrolls, and your grand list, and we come up with a planning materiality, and we pick a test to see if the controls that the finance department is telling us, if those controls are working and in place. And then if they're not, or if we find issues with that, then we may expand our tests or mention them in our management letter, which we do have items mentioned in our management letter this year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to follow Bonnie's lead, are there any other specific questions about the audit, or can we seek a summary of the general findings for the benefit of the public? Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, and maybe this will come up in the summary. If Bonnie, you could explain the why there's such a discrepancy between the general fund surplus at $436,947 and the unassigned fund balance of $1,103,490.
Okay, sure. So the net change in fund balance of $436,947 is only the current year's surplus. So that was the surplus that was generated during fiscal year June 30th, 2021. The fund balance that's on page 12 is an accumulation of surpluses and deficits since the town of Norwich began.
Okay.
So that's the difference between the two.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
Okay.
Right, and just to follow up on that line, it seemed to be revenue increased due to the collection of delinquent taxes, which is probably always a good thing, and that there was a surplus in expenditures, possibly from operations, possibly due to a change in programmatic output as a result of a pandemic.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, so overall, the town financially is in a good position. You have positive fund balances. Most importantly, focusing in on your general fund, you have a positive fund balance of almost 1.3 million, of which 1.1 million is unassigned. And that means that the town has $1.1 million of unassigned fund balances that can be used for operations of the town. So you're in a very healthy position. You have a very strong asset base at almost 1.6 million, with liabilities of 216,000. So you definitely are in a strong position as a town. And that's good news. That's where you want to be. I think, in my opinion, that the last couple of years have been a real struggle for the town in the finance department. And if you look at my management letter, I think you can get the flavor of the issues that I feel exist in the finance department. And I know that there's been a lot going on with the pandemic. I know you have the change of the town manager. The finance department is completely changed over. And we started receiving data this summer, and then we just kind of didn't hear from anybody. But then we started receiving data again in November, and I think there was an overall miscommunication from the finance person that he needed to reconcile the books and have them ready for audit before he sent them to us. So that was kind of a pushback on our side, saying, you really can't send these to us if they're not reconciled. That's not what we should be doing. We should be auditing the numbers from a very independent place. So there was a lot of information that still was coming to us early in January. And Rod reached out to us and said, how fast can you get this done? I was like, well, it really depends when we can get the information and when we can fit it back into the schedule. So I think, overall, there really needs to be a focus on the finance department and getting good staff in there that and you may have them, your current finance director and your accounting now, but with getting additional training on both NEMRIC and in municipal accounting. So municipal accounting is a beast all of its own. It's very different than for-profit accounting. And there's a learning curve there. So I would say that one of my strongest recommendations is making sure that the finance department has the staffing they need and the training they need to put the town in a better position for an audit, because it shouldn't be this delayed. The town is not that outrageously huge that we couldn't be doing the audit in September. So I really do think that would be a really huge recommendation of mine.
Thanks so much. I think we're well aware that that we have a strong management team now, but that obviously a handoff of previous administration at the height of a pandemic was uniquely challenging. So thank you for all of your work in producing this by deadline. It's really valuable.
Sure.
For us, obviously. So thank you for that, Bonnie.
Yeah. And the only other concern that I have, large concern, is that there's $60,000 of taxpayer credits, or there were as of June 30th. And when we inquired of that, we could get close to that number, but we couldn't really get a schedule that tied out to that number. And there wasn't a strong policy on refunding that money to taxpayers. So that would be my second very strong recommendation, is that the town shouldn't have $60,000 of taxpayer money sitting there as refunds on the books. So I really think if that hasn't been done already, and maybe it has been, that's a huge priority to get those reconciled and paid back to taxpayers or applied against current taxes.
Great. Okay. Any other findings? Anything that you would like to bring to, what would be expected to bring to us in a presentation like this, Bonnie? Like anything else, I guess, might be a simple question.
No,
Okay.
Like I said, the town is in a good financial position. You have a strong fund balance. I think now with the new finance department and team that they just really need to focus on these items and just strengthen the controls, the presentation and the reporting that's coming to you as the select board, and then in preparation for the audit.
Yes, that sounds like excellent follow-up, post meeting day for sure. So I'm looking for board members to nod, but yes, yes, that's what we do in the Zoom era. We nod. Okay. All right. Any other questions for our independent auditor? Go ahead, Marcia.
So for these taxpayer credits, Bonnie, is that just from the last tax year or is that longer? Can you tell?
Yeah, it is. Some of it is longer. There was a balance at the end of 20 and it just grew into 21. So I think there's probably going to be some pretty good research involved in unraveling what is owed to taxpayers there. So
that's important.
Very, very important. Yes. Transparency and having strong controls is hugely important.
Right. Can I ask, on page 25 of your report, page 75 of our packet, it says the town doesn't have policies regarding custodial credit risk, concentration of credit risk, interest risk, or foreign currency risk. Is that normal for towns?
No, not necessarily. You should have a policy for those risks.
Okay.
We have to rank your risks in certain categories, and you really should have a policy that describes what you expect your exposure to be, what your limits are.
Okay. And my final question is, you also referred to category 3. I sort of was reading around and thought maybe that meant about deposits and investments. Is that what that refers to? That's also on page 25.
Right. That's your letter of credit and your sweep account that Mary was asking questions about originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. Like, I don't, obviously when we developed our master financial policies, we did so with templates and model guidance from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And so, these policy suggestions may have been there, but may not have. But either way, it's yes. Mary is nodding more confidently now, but it is helpful to know about. It is helpful to obviously hear it from you, right? So so thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board member questions? I'm not seeing any. I'll take some public comment. All right, so I'm seeing a number that I don't recognize. So if you can just state your name and I guess locatable address for us, that would be appreciated. And it's *6 to unmute.
Am I the number, Roger, you're looking at?
I am. Is that you, Cheryl Lindbergh?
It's Cheryl, yeah.
Okay,
sorry,
hi.
I'm on the road. Hi.
Yes, go ahead. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Cheryl.
Who are you, Cheryl? Tell
Hi.
the people.
Oh, sorry, Cheryl Lindbergh, 59 Koch Road, Norwich. Couple of things to Roger I'd just like to add and ask. First of all, we don't have a sweep account now. We have a single bank account that is collateralized by a letter of credit, and the current level is up to 12 million, I believe it is. So to go to Mary's point, We have increased it, knowing that collections come in, the school money doesn't get over to the school as quickly as it could. We've had those conversations, and so we protect ourselves for those two different tax payments that come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we collect and we pay over to the school to get our balances back down and stay within the collateralization. If that doesn't happen, then it can be a problem, but typically I'm urging school payments to be done.
I have a question
So
on that.
I would like.
So Mary,
Okay.
Mary has a question. Mary would like to make a comment in response to that, if just to continue to make it conversational. That would be
on
great.
that, just on that point, Cheryl, if it's okay. So that's really great news. Why would that not have been apparent to Bonnie? I mean, I don't, because in the audit, it says 8 million. Is it just sort of something wasn't updated? What, like, how is it communicated? So that
Has this been a new procedure or something new that changed as a result of this?
I
Well,
think
each
that,
year, knowing.
oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
Go ahead.
Well, each year the bank approaches me to discuss the level we would like to have, and knowing that the school and town collections grow each year, we increase the line of credit to protect our balances. So, trying to think if at 6/30/21 we may have been, I would have thought we were more like 9 million. Or something more than that, but I don't know which document might have been provided to Bonnie, but I do know we're up to 12 million now because I'm watching balances of the town right now.
I guess my question is, can we get that communication clear so that we're all on the same page? Because it's so good to know that we have this, what seems like much more adequate collateralization, but it didn't seem to come through. And it might have been just the chaos of this year with all the changes in the finance department. But I just think it would be helpful going forward to have clear communication about that.
Absolutely.
I provide the documentation to the finance office every time I have done this. It's November that it gets done.
Okay.
And
good to know.
I would hope that Fielding has copies of prior years there at the office.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And I just want to say that, like, this is I believe that this was a change. It may well have been a result of a good conversation between the finance office and the treasurer to make this change. But remember, Mary is asking these questions because this was, we had a meeting where there was additional line of credit, taken out without the finance office or the board knowing. So now we are communicating, and I think that the result of a new management team and Cheryl and hopefully Cheryl's confidence in them, right? So that's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
Roger, you're welcome. I just would like to correct what you said.
Go ahead.
I didn't take out a line of credit. I opened an additional bank account to protect balances of the town that did exceed the collateral we had. But by opening that up, I protected the $3 million that was exposed.
Right. And in violation of our policy, and then we went through and made motions to correct it, right? So we got on the same page in the past, which was a great thing.
Yep.
So that's why Mary's asking these lines of questions, because we want to make sure that there's a good communication and a good working relationship.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and I'm sorry to interrupt your public comment, but this is good work. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, that's fine. And then I noticed in the Bonnie, if I might direct a question to Bonnie, in the revenue and expenditure report, which is the detailed version, there are several departments where wages are over budget, but like FICA and Medicare and things are under budget. And I didn't know how much detail you got into in some of those areas with the audit?
Well, we look at it and we do analytical review, but it's honestly in towns and municipalities, it's not uncommon to have the wages distributed by department, but have a department, the general fund, carry more of the payroll taxes and benefits. So it's not unusual to see. So it's not terribly alarming as long as it's in total adequate. But if that being said, if that's a concern of you as the treasurer and the finance department, then that should be something that I would recommend that you look at. The payroll may not be allocating the way you want it to. In other words, the payroll back end may say, point the payroll taxes to a different account than the departmental wages go to.
Okay. And Roger, I just one last question.
Please go
I may?
for it. Yes, thank you, Cheryl.
I don't know how many hands are up because I've never done this by phone.
There are not many hands, I assure you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thanks.
Yeah.
Bonnie, on the unassigned fund balance, any guidance that you would offer us in terms of utilizing some of that to give back to the town with the process of setting our tax rate? Or do you feel that needs to be an article on a warning to request that to be done?
Just rhetorically speaking, of course, right, Cheryl?
I don't feel like your unassigned balance is so large that you have too much room there to buy down your tax rate. I usually look at that as a percentage of what your total expenditures are. Your total expenditures with transfers are almost 4.7 million plus, and your unassigned fund balance is only $1 million. So kind of what you have to do when you're looking at, if you do want to buy down your tax rate, is what are your projections for FY 23? How far does your revenue and outside of your tax base exceed or cover your taxes? Do you have any capital projects coming up that you're going to have to be doing 20% matches? And I realize the town has ARPA money that you're going to be spending too. So, that's another consideration because you won't have any match there. So I don't know if you're planning any water projects or anything like that, but you could possibly have some match related with that. So, $1 million is not a huge, just to get back to the question, $1 million is not an excessive amount of unassigned fund balance when your expenditures are 4.7 million. It's not leaving too much room for error should an emergency or something come up.
Okay.
So you encourage an unassigned fund balance?
I encourage an adequate unassigned fund balance to make sure that you have enough to push the following year through and cover your operating expenses in your general fund. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions from board members? Great. So if there's no other questions, I think we should thank Bonnie for her time and her work. And we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So the next item is a warrant and recording fee waiver for closing on Woody Adams Conservation Forest and Conservation Easement. We're to approve the warrant for $131,180.17 for the easement and associated fees. I believe we have a previous motion authorized Rod to do this, but it's an agenda item, and we have the benefit of a memo because of the amount and because it's very much the final step in a long process, and we should perhaps we should just celebrate it as well as approve it. So if there's no discussion, I'll just begin with a motion, if that's okay. Go ahead, Marcia. You're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't have any problem, obviously, with the purchase. I do kind of, it does seem odd. We should be treating ourselves the way we treat other people, I think. So waiving the filing fees seems a little unnecessary to me.
Okay.
I know it's moving the recording fees. I'm sorry. It's moving the pocket money from one pocket to another, but it just seems like I just like the appearance of treating everybody, even ourselves, the same.
I don't. I think it saves ourselves some administrative work. So
We're all about administrative work.
I think it's yeah. Okay. I have no opinion. Anyone else? Okay.
I think,
Marcia?
yeah, if you'd like to, maybe, could we divide that up into 2 motions rather than 1? Because I'd like to vote for the purchase, but not for the recording fees.
Marcia, I'm not seeing out. It's hard in Zoom, but I'm not necessarily seeing. Do any board members have any comments on that? Otherwise, there's a motion in our motion sheet. Go ahead, Rod. Do you want to help us out or give us some context?
Hi there. Actually, there's 2 motions at the end of the memo. One deals with the amount for the warrant, and the second motion actually deals with the waiving of the recording fees. I'm sorry, there might have been an oversight putting the motion sheet together, but the memo actually contains 2 motions exactly as Marcia was asking for.
Okay, so this will be divided up.
So do we see, so if they're not on the motion sheet, so I don't have the motion sheet in front of me because I usually
I
ask
can do
the
this.
motion. Great, thank you.
Okay.
And then if not, Mary, Rod's memo, you can refer to
I'll
Rod's
do it
memo.
in 2 pieces. I don't have a memo, but I think I can split up the motion to split apart the purchase from the fees. So,
The memo, Mary, it's on page 109 of the packet.
well, I don't know how to split a screen to look at that. So
Okay.
would you
So-
rather do it?
No, it's okay. Well, I can.
Here.
I mean, it's pretty simple motion.
I'm
Go ahead, Roger. Sorry.
no, I'm sorry. I'm happy to do it, right? Okay. So I move to approve a warrant in the amount of $131,180.17, with $130,000 coming from the Conservation Designated Fund and the remainder from the general fund for the town's contribution to the purchase of the Woody Adams Conservation Forest.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you so much. Now there's a second motion where the motion moves to approve the waiver of recording fees. So we're saying that we don't want to do that. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing? So Marcia, do you have a motion? Do you have a motion, Marcia? Yeah.
Sure. I move to, well, this is a negative, isn't it?
We don't want to do that. Yeah.
We don't want to do the negative. So
Right.
I'm not.
Well, I'll move to waive the town's recording fees for the Woody Adams Conservation Easement transaction.
Okay, so you're following the suggested motion.
I'm following the suggested motion, yeah.
Okay. There's
Second.
all right. This is
It's really messed up.
okay. Well, okay. Well, any discussion? So this is the suggestion that we have, right? To waive the recording fees. Any discussion? Because Marcia wants to at least have the discussion from folks, right? Go ahead, Claudette.
How much are the recording fees?
Yeah, good point.
The recording fees are a total of $105, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So any other further discussion? So Marcia, you voted for it's divided in a way where you can support the thing that's really important to you, right?
I already did.
Great, and we did that.
Yeah.
So we have a motion on the table, we have a second, we discussed it. So I'm going to call the question then, all right?
Yep.
I assume I'll roll call. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marcia, how do you vote?
No.
Okay, Claudette, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Great. Okay, thank you. That was.
And thank you to Craig Lane for all the work he's done with
Yes.
this project.
Just together.
Craig and the Conservation Commission for sure. Thank you. And I think they're here somewhere. So thanks. So this is a generational shift for us, right? It's a big thing. All right. So let's move on to the next item of the agenda then, which is the Tigertown Culverts construction inspection services and contractor bid and VT Vermont 132 contractor bid approvals, and we'll approve it. We have Arita Cito from Two Rivers with us, who has been working really closely with the town on this, and then also, onboarding our new DPW director in the work. I just want to say, on behalf of all of us, Rita, thank you for all your work, particularly at this unique moment in Norwich. Thank you also for taking questions from our citizens on our sidewalk grant program. Thank you for your time and your work. So with that said, what can you tell us about these contracts?
Sure. Well, thank you. Nice to see you all. I'm Rita Cito with the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Planning Commission. As Roger mentioned, I kind of play a variety of different roles, from being the transportation and planner at the Regional Planning Commission, working closely with your DPW folks, and previous history with the Beaver Meadow scoping study bike application. But today I'm here to talk about the Tigertown and actually the 132 box culvert. So in my current position, contracted with the town to be the municipal project manager for the Tigertown projects. And just if you are familiar, a little bit of the history of the Tigertown projects, they were blown out during the 2017 FEMA event. FEMA did not replace them as recommended because they weren't technically damaged. Mm-hmm. So we were able to, the town and I were able to apply for this mitigation grant through VTrans to basically upsize both culverts. It's been quite a bit of a long process, but we are finally ready for construction, which is exciting. So the two proposals before you, one of them is we have procured a construction inspection consultant that will do engineering on site, just to ensure that the contractor is building the culverts to the design plans as designed by Stantec. So we procured them through the at the ready process through VTrans. We had 6 firms that we reviewed, and Du Bois and King was our top choice, and we've negotiated with them. The contract is before you, and they were able to propose a budget about estimating roughly within our budget estimate for the project. So they are excited to work with us, and they are ready to go. So before you is a proposal for the contract force, I believe 7920. Thank you, 204. And so the action that we're hoping to ask the select board is approve the recommended selection of the Du Bois and King and authorize the town manager to sign the contract.
All All right. So are there any questions for Rita on this? Go ahead, Mary.
I have two questions. Rita, if you could shed any light on the analysis that Stantec did in evaluating the low bids. There were some means of discerning whether the bids were reasonable. It was quite formulaic and I didn't quite understand it. Could you shed some light on that?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to talk about that now or oh yeah, okay. How about this? I'll move on to my discussion about the contractor bids and then maybe you guys
do it a
can
little
take
later.
action afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So sorry,
Marsha, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, Rita, I just wanted to ask, because I'm new to this, can you just tell me, is this normal for having someone like Dubois and King to act as a, contractor in a project like this? Is it because of the size of the project, or is it just always done this way?
Yes. So, especially with a project the size, which is over, I think, $250,000, and using federal funds, VTrans does like to have a third-party firm to, inspect the construction project to ensure that the contractor is building to what, the design standards of, because you wouldn't want the same firm to kind of audit themselves in a way. And sometimes they might, find some things that perhaps the previous firm may have missed or tweaked. So it's nice to have kind of like a fresh eye to review that.
Okay, that's what
and
I thought.
Obviously, the bigger, the more complex the project, it is more advantageous to have a third-party inspection team.
Thank you.
And they also do like material testing too. So just making sure, the concrete of the structure is to, whatever the standard specifications is and things like that. So.
Thank you. I suspected that, but I wanted confirmation.
Sure.
So we'll sort of let Rita roll through the full scope of what she's here to talk to us about then, and then take the motions after. That's what I'm hearing, but from board members. Okay.
That sounds great. Okay.
Great. Go ahead.
So simultaneously, we were able to get the construction contract out to bid fairly soon, right after the new year, which is what we were hoping for, because last year it was a little bit too late to go out to bid like in June, especially with we have to order precast concrete structures and the lead time. And as you are all aware of, the wonderful supply chain issues in construction industry right now. And so we felt like going out to bid after the holidays was kind of good for the town. The contractors have kind of, wrapped up the previous construction season and they're kind of planning out their next construction season. And so we were hoping, to put this one as well as the 132 box culvert together, because they're all box culverts. We're hoping to entice contractors to bid on both to hopefully get, a better price. And so that's what we did. We had quite a bit of interest in the plans, but finally we are able to have the bid opening. We had to postpone it because the original bid opening was on the Friday, which was the snowstorm. So we thought to postpone it for everybody's sake, understanding that many of the contractors that might be bidding was also doing snow cleanup. So we didn't want to interfere with that. So on Tuesday, February 8th, 6 contractors submitted the bids. We had obviously varying degrees of cost. Stantec's estimate for the job was roughly $463,000 for the entire Tigertown project for construction. We got 6 bids. So in your memo, we had the high bid of $743,000 to obviously our current low bidder of $414,176, which went to Kirk Fenoff and Son Excavating. They are a contractor out of Danville, and through our VTrans and things like that, they've done culvert work and other state federal projects. So let me see here. Let's see. Okay. So they prepared bids, and then Stantec was able to prepare the bid analysis. So what they did was they compared all the individual construction items and what they thought, the quantities and the price per unit for that particular one would cost. And they kind of compared it to what all the other contractors thought they would need for that. And there's kind of like a percentage threshold to see what the difference was in between all of those. Of course, he looked closely at Kirk Fenoff because he was the lowest bid. And so just kind of comparing a side-by-side price of like the quantities estimated versus what they were, wanting. They were kind of looking at, what that price percentage difference is. I haven't done this myself because I'm not an engineer, but that's what I have understood. That was how they kind of process the bid tabulations is, they do kind of like a side-by-side of each of the different bid items and just making sure it's within a percentage threshold that wouldn't say, okay, well, Stantec had estimated like 50 tons for, excavation rock. And perhaps, Kirk Fenoff is only recommending this much or a little bit more, but the price is, a lot more for some reason. So just the way they're doing the bid analysis is just kind of like there's some checks and balances within their formula just to make sure that it's, comparing apples to apples. So
yeah, they do this weighted. Yeah. They do
so that's
like
kind
a
of
weighted.
how they do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to, so Chris Kaufman is our new DPW director who joined us on time, which usually means he is here to wait a while, but we were shockingly efficient. So welcome, Chris. But go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to add on to that. This is sort of a weighted bid analysis that engineering firms do, so to make sure that one item in particular is not weighted too strangely in case you get into a situation when you're out there and you find one particular item it goes over that bid amount, and then you sort of get really hammered by that cost. And sometimes contractors do that sort of as a way to sort of hedge their bet, so to speak. So they look at it from this sort of weighted analysis to make sure it's just properly
distributed
weighted, so there's no excesses in one spot versus the other. So
right. And so it can, to kind of avoid any in the field change orders that are unexpected and which would cause the town for additional costs. So we're trying to reduce that.
Just to not to interrupt, but this is, I guess, this is only my third year, but this is the first time I've really sort of heard a presentation of a sort of the mechanisms or the tool for a bid analysis. Is it unique to this set of projects, or is this something that, I'm just late to the party too? Does that make sense?
It's pretty common. Yeah. For most projects, they go through this fairly elaborate process, but I think it's a good process to go through. So, yeah.
Okay.
And especially it's a federal, construction project. So VTrans also has specific requirements for contractors, as well as, the firms that do it, that this is the way to ensure that there isn't anything wonky in the low bid and everything looks kosher and,
Okay, cool. Rod, you had your hand up, and then
just to endorse what Rita and Chris already said, that each subdiscipline of engineering and each subset of federal grant programs has their own procedures. The weighted analysis is kind of the standard in it.
Okay.
It's a commonplace aspect of particularly federal grant based funding, and VTrans uses it even outside the federal funding model as well. It's pretty standard in engineering.
Okay. So Marcia, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment because everything makes sense, except I'm looking at this, this analysis of the balanced items and the precast concrete structures. There's a difference between the unit price of the engineer and the Kirk Fenoff folks. And I sort of, in my naivete, think that's like off the shelf, you get a concrete structure. And so why the big difference? I don't understand why that would be.
I think so. Typically, what the contractors do, because this is a precast, so they have to order this custom structure in advance. They might have been able to negotiate with one of those concrete vendors for a decent price to manufacture these structures. So that's why, there might be a bit of a difference in the cost of those.
But we'll have Dubois there to make sure that there's no difference in the quality.
Correct. Yeah, they will have to do the testing of the concrete and just, making sure, the strength of it and, rebar and all that fun stuff is to the standard, the design specs before they actually install it in.
Mm-hmm.
And they track
this. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they track the quantities. They'll be out there doing daily quantity checks and verifying all the pay quantities. So that's part of their job. So
cool.
So they'll also review a lot of the, the invoice that the contractor will submit. So they'll just double check their notes of quantities, making sure everything looks good. And if, for example, the contractor is requesting a change order, they will have to justify why it's, a legit change order, and the resident engineer will, either approve or not approve of it, and then bring that to our attention.
Go ahead, Mary.
I have a question about the 132 bid. It's a well-traveled road, and I'm just wondering, I think in earlier conversations, this might be wrong, but it's been my impression that the road might have to actually be closed for a while, or, I'd just like to know what the setup is. Would it be a one-lane kind of thing? Would it be flaggers, or would it have to be a traffic light or of some sort? And also, I noticed a stream diversion, and it's kind of a tight little corner there. So you may not be able to answer that, but I'm just trying to visualize how it would play out.
Sure. I'll have to open up the bid documents on what their traffic control plan is. So I'm not the project manager for the 132 project, Israel, which the town has a contract with Stantec. He's the same designer on the 130 on the Tigertown project. So it's great because he knows both projects, which is fantastic. I will have to look into what his traffic control plan is for 132.
Because if it's flaggers, it's one price. If it's traffic light, that's a whole different deal.
Right.
And also just if it has to be closed for a period of time,
well, there's definitely, it will have to be closed at one point to put the box in.
Right.
Yeah, there'll definitely be some closure activities going on, and sometimes they don't get into that level of detail, and sometimes they'll put in a traffic control plan in the set of plans. I'm not sure if that included that in the set of plans. A lot of times that's up to the contractor and the town to sort of work out those items when they get to the pre-construction meeting and sort of develop a sort of understanding of how the contractor wants to approach the work. And I from my experiences, contractors are pretty amenable to try to work with the towns and try to minimize the impacts to the local traffic. They don't want to do that as much as anybody does. So.
Sure. Yeah.
We're just taking a quick look at the 132 cost estimate. They do have line items for flaggers and traffic control. So probably not traffic lights. So, up until, as they prep the site area, they'll probably do flaggers. And then, once they have to close the road completely, that that closure will, the town and the community and the nearby area will be notified for that closure to put the box in and, fill it in and put the road back on. So yeah, that's what I'm, thinking that's what they'll
What
do.
it looked like.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously it's a well-trafficked road, lot of trucks. I also live on it, so all those Stratford and Thetford people and their trucks go by, for sure. And actually Stratford's DPW crew, I think, goes back all the time too. So, so yes.
And as you know, because these are structures, the contractors won't be able to actually work in the water until after July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be on site doing, prep work before then, but the actual closure and all that stuff won't actually happen until after July 1st.
Sure, during the summer. Yep.
And the biggest thing is, when are those precast concrete structures going to be arriving?
Yes, that's true.
So, obviously the sooner we can order them, the better.
Sure. So Rita, Rita and Chris, are there anything else that you would like to share with us? Yes. We'll let you finish.
No, and so as with the 132, the same contractor was also the low bidder.
Right.
And they also went through the same, bid analysis to make sure their quantities was good. And both, VTrans had actually reviewed the bid tabs of the low bidder just to make sure. So they have approved it before we actually, sent it to you. So it does have VTrans approval for this contractor, as well as the construction inspection team. So we got the sign off for both to move forward. So all that's left is the town to, approve the recommendations and have Rod sign the contract. And once those are executed, the next step is planning a pre-construction meeting with all of the key core team players and just kind of walking through the different projects and schedule. And obviously as the schedule gets closer of, actual start of construction, as well as road closures, that will be relayed to the town, and, we can pull that. And if you need to, distribute on the listserv just to make sure there's community notification of the works going on, we can do that too. So.
Yeah, and generally when the schedule comes, that's the great opportunity to review the schedule during the pre-construction meeting. That's when they show up with at least the initial schedule. You'll have time to put your thoughts into it and have some real input in that. And since they're doing both projects, I think they'll be, also sort of engaged in the entire community at that point. So they'll be looking to try to get our input and try to minimize impacts as much as possible. So
right. So if it's like, if there's a particular weekend that they want to avoid closing because there's a community event going on or something like that, we can try to, kind of negotiate like which particular weekend to kind of shift it on for actual closure. So.
So that's great. So obviously we've been talking about these projects for a while, but they were sort of shepherded through with interim staff, right? So it feels celebratory to be at this moment. So I just wanted to note that, and thank you, Rita, for your work in, as I said earlier, that unique moment. And so just question for Rod, we can take some motions, but I'm seeing, so obviously the motions authorized you to sign contracts for services of a defined amount. I guess if we can know the designated fund, I assume, or the reserve fund that they are coming from at a future meeting, that would be good. We're not expending the money, right? So I don't think we need to, I don't need to know. I personally don't need to know to make the motion, but just
to be clear, they're reimbursement grants. So Rita spent some time explaining these in her memo, which is excellent. So in shortest terms, shortest language as possible. We will pay the bill when it comes in from the contractor, either Dubois & King or the Kirk Fenoff and Sons, and then we will pass that invoice directly to Reader, and then we get reimbursed. So that's the rule.
Yeah, so I was wrong, and thank you for your clarity.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. So can we take motions?
Yeah, I'll get started on that.
Okay.
I move to authorize the town manager to sign the Dubois & King contract to conduct contract inspection services for $79,204.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, made by Mary, seconded by Claudette. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you so much. Would you like to continue, Mary?
Sure. I move to authorize the town manager to sign the notice of award to Kirk Fenoff and Son Excavating LLC for construction services for $414,176.10.
Right, notice of award, key language. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, made by Mary, seconded by Rob. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. One more.
Okay. I move to authorize the town manager to sign the notice of award to Kirk Fenoff and Son Excavating LLC for construction services of $216,583.74.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, made by Mary, seconded by Claudette. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. That concludes that agenda item. Yes, Claudette is celebrating this milestone. So thank you so much, everyone. Go ahead, Marcia. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, so quick question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know why. It's been a long day, but
yeah.
The motion for Dubois & King, is that for both Tigertown and Route 132?
Just for
just the one?
Tigertown. Yeah.
Okay.
132 is through a VTrans structures grant and does not require.
Okay, good. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. So thank you, Rita and Chris.
Thank you.
I imagine you would leave, but you can feel free to stay though.
Well.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you all.
Thank you again.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a review of preferred siting for solar projects in Norwich. Presentation from R. Francis with opportunity for questions. So we have a lot of correspondence, all of which was requested to be a confirmation of receipt, which I have tried to dutifully do. We also have heard from folks after our deadline for correspondence. So we've heard from folks wanting us to take a more careful look at our preferred siting process, and for folks who were reaffirming the process as they understood it. So I wanted, what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to explain in a couple bullet points the background and process steps that the Planning Commission took in July and that we took in August. We're going to have the benefit of a presentation for 12 minutes from Rod with some visuals about what the process is in the town of Norwich. And then board members will make comments, and we'll of course take public comment for everyone as well. So just really quickly, the town plan explains a preferred site as a parcel of land in Norwich not subject to scenic, cultural, or natural resource overlays. A preferred site project proposal receives a letter from the planning director confirming its location as a preferred site for location in a PUC application. This application on Upper Loveland Road is in the Ridgeline Overlay District. And so an applicant that would like a support letter, which is a statement that the project meets the requirement of a preferred site, must demonstrate that there is no undue adverse impact and meet the regulatory standard in the land use regulations for that. And so this review was conducted by the Planning Commission July 13th, right? And then we received, and then we affirmed their recommendation by vote in August. As we've met all of the statutory requirements and warning notice of this as an agenda item. But obviously, we're here to review this because the public wants more information, at least, right? And that's fine. That's great. Okay. Anything else that I would like to say? We have Jackie Allen, the chair of the Planning Commission, with us, and we're happy to provide TRORC's rationale for signing their preferred site letter in support that subsequent to our preferred siting project as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Rod Francis for I think 12 minutes. We'll see. He'll go through it. He has some visuals. It worked well when Claudette suggested it previously for another agenda item, so we'll do that again. Okay, and then we'll take board comments, questions, and then proceed to public comment. Thanks, Rod.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rod Francis. I'm the planning director, the zoning administrator, and the town manager today. Let me just change the way this works. I hope that works okay.
Yes, it's great.
So thank you, Roger, for the introduction. As people know, back in the 2018 through 2019 timeframe, the Planning Commission undertook a rewrite of the Norwichtown plan, and in particular spent a lot of time on the question of associated with the energy chapter, which is a key chapter of the plan. And the commitment was made by the Planning Commission at the time to ensure that the town plan would reflect appropriate policies for the next 8 years, the term of the plan, that would represent the community's values with regard to renewable energy generation and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the background context to the arrival at the decision to identify in a plan how the town of Norwich will process solar generation facility applications seeking so-called preferred site status. Without getting into too much detail right now, that, as you probably know, is Rule 5100 from the Public Utility Commission that sets out a process for applicants using seeking a certificate of public good, which is basically a permit issued by the Public Utility Commission, the process for obtaining so-called preferred site status, and the scope which towns can use in terms of determining preferred site status. So the idea here is that I'm going to step you through what would happen if somebody was going to approach Norwich for the location of a solar generation facility that required a certificate of public good, so it has to be of a certain size, and seeking preferred site status. So the first thing that the Planning Commission did was to actually discuss the possibility that other than lands already delineated and demarcated on a range of zoning maps and in the town plan that were of special interest, that the rest of Norwich should be considered suitable for preferred site status. You'll see here in step 1, an applicant would submit materials to the planning director. And then the next step would be that the planning director would have to make a determination as to whether the project site was inside or outside the ridgeline overlay area, the village district, or the shoreline district. And so if the answer is that the project is outside, one of those overlay districts, then the planning, so that's a yes. Then the planning director simply provides a support letter citing the 2020 town plan, issues it to the applicant. There's no question or involvement of the Norwich zoning regulations to do that. It's merely checking the map with regard to potential overlay areas. And then that letter is included in any forthcoming planning commission packet. To date, we've not had one of those since the town plan was implemented. The other answer that a planning director could come up with is the no answer. And that's when more work is involved. So if the planning director determines that the project site or the proposed project site is in a ridgeline overlay area or the village district or one of the other overlay districts, they identify that for the applicant, and then they describe the process to the applicant, and the zoning administrator, or the planning director references standards as found in table 2.9 of the Norwich zoning regulations, and also cites section 508 of the Norwich zoning regulations to guide the applicants as to what kind of material they need to prepare and what the standard of review is. Now, there's been many questions and some confusion, I believe, in this last go around as to why the town plan sets up a process that then cites the zoning regulations as a standard when it's supposed to be the town plan that makes the policy. So the explanation here is important. Because the Planning Commission does find itself in a situation where it's reviewing a potential development, in this instance, a solar generation facility, it needs to be able to actually go through that process in a consistent way that's standardized so that any two applicants could reach the conclusion that they've been treated the same way. Not just the applicants, but also abutters and members of the community. So we can't be in a situation where we're making an ad hoc process. We need to have consistency. The easiest and most effective way of achieving this consistency, so therefore avoiding any suggestion of being capricious or arbitrary, is to actually employ a standard that we already know that we have and we already know that works. And in this instance, that standard can be found in the Norwich zoning regulations. So that's why there's a link at this point between the town plan and the zoning regulations. It's not because we're confused. It's not because we're making a mistake. It's not because we've just flipped and decided to use the zoning regulations because it's easier than the town plan. It's because there's a process that uses an identified standard and applies it fairly and consistently so that all applicants and all abutters basically get the same treatment, if not exactly the same outcome. So the next step is that the applicant submits an application, including a visual impact analysis according to the minimal adverse impact standard as provided for in table 2.9 of the Norwich zoning regulations in section 508, which details the review process. The applicant then confirms to the planning director that abutters have been contacted, and this is the same standard as all other development applications in Norwich, and it's consistent with 24 VSA section 4464, which lays out how an abutter is defined and that they need to be contacted in the instance where a development is being proposed. We'll get onto that in a little bit more detail, but it needs to be said here that many of the people that have identified themselves as abutters do not meet the definition of abutter in 24 VSA 4464, or therefore the Norwich zoning regulations. You have to share a property boundary or be directly over the road from the subject parcel to meet the definition of an abutter. And so this is an important distinction. It means that an alternative situation for this very parcel could be somebody applying to the Development Review Board for a conditional use permit to build a house because it's in the Ridgeline Overlay District. And exactly the same people would be notified if it was for a zoning permit application, as in this instance. It's no broader, it's no narrower. The applicant in this instance, Norwich Technologies, did undertake that they'd contacted the abutters according to this standard. Then once the applicant has developed their materials and is ready to present to the Planning Commission, the key issue for the Planning Commission is to determine whether there's any undue adverse impact of a visual nature. This standard doesn't reference any other environmental or design issues. It's purely about visual impact. And I think it's important at this point to note that a different form of development, again, using, say, a family home as an example, it's not that there can be absolutely no visual impact. It's that there can be no undue adverse impact, which is to say some impact could be expected, and that it could be expected that there could be some visual impact. Why is this so? Well, because many parts of the ridgeline are already developed. They've already got homes and other forms of development on them, and those people have a reasonable expectation that they can continue to develop those properties or change elements of those properties, and that it's also acknowledged and understood that depending on seasonal conditions and other factors, some level of visual impact could be expected, and it could vary from season to season or from point to point. Why do we just focus on the visual impact? Because that's what's unique to the Norwich standard, and the other aspects that I already mentioned, such as environmental impact or stormwater impact or floodplain impact. Each one of these issues is addressed by Vermont state agencies, all who have party status to the Public Utility Commission proceedings. So they're the ones that own the data. They're the ones that map the features that are important, and they're the ones that are required to comment by the Public Utility Commission. So it has the same standards and of review as an Act 250 proceeding. And so it's important for the Planning Commission not to cloud or complicate the process of review at this point if they know that all those standards are going to be addressed and picked up through the Public Utility Commission proceedings themselves. In this way, we are quite similar to the Regional Planning Commission in terms of their approach as well. So, assuming that the applicant can demonstrate that there's no undue adverse visual impact, the Planning Commission is likely to vote on a letter of support. And if a majority of the Planning Commission votes for a letter of support, it goes forward that letter goes forward with the application to the Select Board. At this point, the applicant repeats exactly the same process. So for the Planning Commission meeting and for the Select Board meeting, they're duly warned, they're noticed, those agendas are available, the information is made available to the public. In both, as far as I can recall, there were certainly people present at the Planning Commission meeting that were interested in the project and knew that it was being proposed. So I'm happy to leave it there unless people have specific questions, or I can hand it back to Roger here.
I think it's a good place to pause right now. So yeah, you stopped your screen. Great. So I think that's very thorough. I think that summarizes the process that we undertook incredibly well. I hope board members agree. I'm seeing Mary nod. Great. And so are there any questions or comments further to that presentation on how preferred siting works in the town of Norwich? Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, so Rod, how do you address the argument that the Norwich process imposes a town-created process which is above and beyond the definitional requirements of a preferred site determination in the PUC Rule 5.100, and particularly paragraph 7?
Can you repeat your question, Marcia, for at least my benefit, because it was long?
Sure. How would you address the argument that the Norwich process imposes a town-created additional process above and beyond the definitional requirements of a preferred site determination as set out in the PUC Rule 5.100 and specifically paragraph 7?
I don't have that before me.
I want to make sure I heard the question right because it was long. Okay. So essentially, to paraphrase, Marcia, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're suggesting that the preferred siting in Norwich is a town created process that imposes on regulatory standard from the PUC. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's a higher standard than the PUC.
So you're saying that locally we have a higher standard.
I'm saying, how would Rod address that argument that this looks like a town created higher standard?
How does the town address that argument? Okay.
Well, Rod's he's defending why he proceeds with this particular procedure.
How the town does? Okay. Yeah.
So yes, I think the first point I'm going to make is that when I do this as the planning director, I'm working in support of the Planning Commission, and it's a policy that's adopted by the Planning Commission, number one. So it is for the town. Number two, it's not a higher standard per se. It's the one attribute that Norwich has in its town plan and also represented through specific standards in Norwich land use regulations that calls out particular areas of special interest, which is the overlay areas. And so towns can adopt a process for reviewing an application for a preferred site status. They can either do it on an ad hoc one-by-one basis, or they can develop a process. And in developing a process, we paid attention to avoiding being arbitrary and capricious, which would be the risk of an ad hoc process. And we didn't necessarily go through the process of identifying every parcel for potential impact and or potentially being a preferred site, because the vast amount of work that would have been involved in that without any indication that any one of those sites would be called upon for development. So it's a practical response to the rules as laid out by the Public Utility Commission. The Public Service Department has reviewed the town plan, reviewed the language with regard to the presumption of preferred site status. The Regional Planning Commission has approved the town plan, including the policy with regard to preferred site status, and approved the plan. So I would say that the authorities in question here understand what Norwich is doing and have no issue with it.
Great. Thank you so much for that question, Marcia. That's an important one. Okay. Any other questions from board members or comments? All right. I appreciate the visuals and the work. I see that Jackie Allen, we can move into public comments now. How's that? And I see that Jackie Allen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Jackie Allen, 15 Union Village Road. I also serve as the chair of the Planning Commission. I just want to comment because one of the questions I've heard over and over again is, why didn't we just designate specific preferred sites in town like parking lots? And as a practical matter, only 1 to 2% of the land in town is zoned commercial. I think we can count on one hand the number of parking lots, and so over 95% of the town is zoned rural residential. And Rod mentioned, the work to go around and figure out which parcel could be a preferred site. I don't think it's, it's not within our purview to drive around town and look at private land and decide where there should be a solar site. I mean, this is a personal decision if someone wants to go this route, if we're talking rural residential. I think it's a good idea to encourage, solar installations on commercial sites, but as a practical matter, we have very, very little of those sites identified in our town. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Jackie. Are there any other public comments? Okay, go ahead. Claudette has her hand up, but then I see there's a public comment. Claudette, do you want to go?
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that the presentation before the Planning Commission and the Select Board included, I thought, very good information on how this development would not be visible, that it was actually screened by trees. And so, I would encourage people to go look at that presentation.
Right.
When I looked last night, there had only been 15 views. And probably 3 of them were me reviewing and looking it over and over and over again. So, I am not a huge fan of ground-mounted solar projects. But this one, I think, will not be visible, which is why I would be in support. And I also spent many hours reviewing the entire net metering rule in its entirety. And it's interesting reading. And I think how Rod has presented the information, I have no argument with with anything that he's said.
Right, it's the town's process. So just to be clear, Claudette is referring to a viewshed analysis that the applicant provided to the Planning Commission and to us as well. And there are multiple viewsheds provided for that. And I believe there's even more viewsheds that are part of the PUC application as well. Go ahead, Claudette.
And I also looked at the entire application on the PUC website, which is really clunky, but there's a whole host of information on that website. And in the net metering rule, it specifically lays out what people have to do if they're submitting a request or information not in support of the project. And it's very clear what people need to do, and I'm not sure that it's been done, which is why many of the motions were denied.
Thank you, Claudette. And so we may, after I take public comment, we may just say, we might just let folks know where this is now, right? It's before the Public Utility Commission, right? And so, and we'll get into that. Are there any other public comments? I think Mary Albert had their hand up. I don't know if.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. That I found the process that this went through to be consistent and concise and clear. And I really appreciate that as somebody who's not involved in town politics a lot. I will say that we're experiencing climate change. It's increasing at an exponential rate. We're really in the early phase of the impact of climate change. And we're far behind the time to transition to renewable energy. So the least we can do tonight is to approve this select board to facilitate implementation of this solar array. No more delays. Thank you.
Thanks. And just to be clear, thank you for your public comment. Just to be clear, this was a discussion. There's no action, right? We took action by issuing the preferred site letter. This is an agenda item because we heard very vocally from our community, and how could we not, right? Discuss this. So
yeah,
yes.
What I want the select board to do is to move forward with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, any other public comments? Okay, I see Attorney Dingeldine. Are there any folks from
Joy has her hand up.
I want to make sure. I'm sorry, I don't know who's talking to me. So I want to make sure I get some Norwich residents to speak. They can speak after, but okay, I'm not seeing.
No, Joy can says.
I can't see Joy. I'm sorry. Let me just see.
She's on mute. She's on mute.
I'm just looking through the list to make sure. There she is. Okay. Add pin. Thank you. Hi, Joy. Sorry, you're on mute now, so just unmute yourself. Once I finally found you.
Can't hear you.
Let me, I'll ask to unmute. Maybe that will help you.
I found it. Okay, good.
Great.
Now you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi,
Okay.
welcome.
Sorry. I live at 133 Upper Loveland Road, and my property abuts the proposed site. I want to ask Rod a couple of questions. You said that the letter from the Planning Commission was dated July 13th. Is that right? I have the letter that was sent to us in December in the packet. This would be Exhibit NUL-MS minus or -6, an appendix, and it says it's from the Planning Commission from you, Rod, and it's dated July 3rd, 2021. I just want to make sure of the date here.
So folks, just I'm going to let Rod answer these questions, but just procedurally direct the comments to the chair.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah,
That's my first.
Do you have any other questions?
Yes, I do. Oh, yes,
go ahead.
I do.
Please continue.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And so, regarding, let me just find this out. On the staff findings, it states the site has an existing service road for the telecommunications tower, which traverses steep slopes. Then on number 5, the location for the solar generation project on the parcel is not subject to steep slopes. So as far as I can tell, but looking earlier, I don't know how the Planning Commission came to the conclusion for number 5 about steep slopes. And I asked this because specifically the town plan, as well as the Norwich zoning regulations, advise against construction or development on steep slopes. And I cannot tell from the map, and I don't know what went on, what site map the Planning Commission was looking at on July 3rd. This is the map we got in December, but the earlier draft proposal is completely different animal. And this one here, changes were made on it that show how in this area here, the project has moved considerably and significantly eastward on the ridgeline and down the slope, partway down the slope of the ridgeline, which is a steep slope. And your own assessment that was done, that was submitted with these materials, the natural resources assessment that was submitted on August 27, pointed out that, I think this is the right one. I'm so sorry, I can't keep them all. But that the slopes in this area range between 15 and 35%. I don't see anywhere where the steep slopes, the slopes here, particularly in this area here that comes down over the ridge, has been calculated. And it seems to me, just looking out from my backyard, that some of these slopes, and I know the ones closest to my home, are close to 70%, and that those up above are not only 35%, but may actually be greater than that. They have to be calculated. I don't see how, and this is significant because it has to do with erosion and runoff, especially during spring thaw and during storms, rainstorms. So I find this really a serious omission because it could have a terrible impact on our properties. Secondly, all of those evergreens are going to be cut down along the ridge. That then turns the ridge into an uninterrupted into an interrupted skyline. And in fact, in the town plan, and I can't tell whether it's the town plan or the zoning laws, I'm just with zoning regs, I'm confused between the two of them, but it does state somewhere that this should be avoided to keep the ridge line continuous, not to interrupt it. But more important for me is, and I think for my neighbors here, is that by wiping out all of those hemlocks on that ridge, not just the hemlocks on the ridge, but also deciduous trees below the ridge moving eastward on the slope behind our homes. If those trees are taken down as well, and it seems that they're going to come down a considerable distance, that means that the winds, the westerly winds across the ridge could very well affect the other trees down the ridge and affect and blow them down.
Can you just wrap up? Just try to wrap up a little bit, if that's okay. I'm sorry.
I just want you to know that I am extremely concerned about this because it puts my home at risk in terms of water and in terms of wind. And I just don't see any of that addressed here at all in the planning process.
Sure. So thank you for your comment, Joy. So I just wanted to clarify, just a couple you were referencing some documents and I want to try to just speak to them. So you're referring to staff findings in a memo that was prepared by staff for the Planning Commission at their July 13th meeting. So that is what you're referring to, and it summarizes slopes and findings in the Natural Resources Atlas. Okay, so just to be clear. Okay,
it's one sentence. It's just one short sentence. Yes. It says that there is. It's not subject to steep slopes. That's all it says.
Thank you. So
we have no other information.
Yes. So I'm going to turn to Rod for the second part of your question, okay? First, and then we'll go to which I think was a little easier to address, and then the second one. So, Rod, do you want to speak to this at all? The site plan does show that some trees will be cleared, but these are not connected to a large forest block, and plenty will remain to shield the project from the adjacent road. Is there anything that you would add to that?
Hello, Roger. Thank you. So, Ms. Kenseth, I understand your concern and I appreciate the sensitivity of the situation. The memo that I prepared July 3rd in support of the Planning Commission's consideration of the application stepped through the information that was available to us at the time and acknowledged two things that I already explained in that flow chart, which was what is the scope of the Planning Commission's review, and in this instance, the focus was on undue adverse visual impact.
So it's just only that you consider?
Correct.
Okay, because I just didn't understand. It was very confusing to get this information.
Let me just finish, if I could.
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're trying to get you the answer clearly.
Yeah, I really want to try and get the answer out. So you'll notice at the bottom of the first page of the memo, there's a discussion about what constitutes scenic resources, and then it goes on to describe staff findings. I think that the key here is that there is a minor, there's kind of a depression that is the center of the solar generation facilities location, so that it's sort of almost like a bowl shape, which that lends itself to being easy to shield or you screen from visual impact, but it also means that the direction of any stormwater or other negative consequences of the development will be contained. And the key here is that through the Public Utility Commission process, the Agency of Natural Resources and other state agencies review for stormwater impact, including any potential risk to the stability of the slope where you and your neighbors are located. And it goes back to that question of what is the Norwich Planning Commission and Select Board going to look at, and then what are other entities going to look at? And in the knowledge that the Public Utility Commission examines those questions, they were left for them to review. So I feel that it's also important to note that there's been some slight adjustment to the area where the solar generation facility is to be located in response to the delineation of natural features on the site. So it's already been done in response to input from Agency of Natural Resources staff and others. I think that
But we haven't gotten any of that.
Joy,
I don't know where to get that.
Joy, please, we're almost finished, and then I'll allow you to have a follow-up. Okay.
I think it's really important to do a couple of things here. One, I don't want to sort of continue this conversation in the sense that we're going outside the scope of what we're undertaking here, which is an explanation of our process. I think the key thing that I want to keep on emphasizing is that all these questions of yours are good questions. They've been addressed at length by State of Vermont employees already commenting on the application, and that's part of the PUC packet. So if you were to go to the website and review the files that Claudette referenced before, you'd see detailed comment on each one of the questions that you posed. And that's the way the process is intended to work.
And so, Rod, so what in the town's role, so what support, if any, is offered to residents who want to make contact with the Agency of Natural Resources or learn more about what they submitted to the PUC?
Oh, anybody that would like to make comment to the PUC in response to a particular project in Norwich, you're welcome to contact me, and I will attempt to shepherd you through the process of working with the Public Utility Commission.
Okay. That's great. So, Marcia, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Joy, I understand completely your worries, and I worry with you. And I think that there are people I have contacted at the Agency of Natural Resources who would be willing to talk to you. What's wrong, Roger?
I hope that you would do so to support. I don't know why you would do that, Marcia. I just have to ask that.
Because I represent the people in this town.
We all represent the people in this town, Marcia, but thank you. Go ahead, finish your sentence.
Happy to tell you who I talk to, and you can talk to them as well as work with Rod to find out how to get the PUC documents. But I understand what it feels like to have the threat of water on your home.
So yes, so Joy, please make contact with the town's offices, who will get you all the information that you need to find out anything that you need to know.
I would also like to ask another question having to do with, again, the visual analysis.
Sure.
Because what was sent to us, all that I have is the packet that was sent to us in December. I got it on December 9th. All right. And in that packet, the photographs that were taken for visual analysis are very misleading. They are taken during the summer months. We know here on Upper Loveland Road, and most people in Norwich know, that over half of the year, the deciduous trees are leafless. They certainly are on this hillside. Second, the vantage points were very odd. And I'm just going by what they submitted to us that was there for our review. And one was at the end of the street. I have gone up and down the street and taken photos, and the ridge line is clearly visible. And one can see where all of those hemlocks will come down, that will just make it, empty it out completely. It will take a huge chunk out of the sky, out of that skyline. Also, Route 91, I-91 is a town road according to the town plan and our zoning regulations. And I went there, and from mile marker 760 to 76.4, the whole ridge is continuously, clearly visible. And then over on Loveland, but there were no photos from there.
Yes.
And the photo that was taken over on Loveland Road was in the summer months and from an angle that was just through trees. But there are other points on Loveland Road where the ridgeline is visible.
So Thank you, Joy. And like part of what we can provide, if it's any help, is the what is called the view shed analysis, right? What your question was about the multiple views that describe. You could also potentially even walk, the
But
walk
why weren't we
property with-
sent this?
and
Why
then
weren't we
view
given
and
this
view the
information?
view shed and then view the view shed analysis. And we're happy to provide the information that was in all of the packet materials.
Excuse me, Roger. This is Charlotte Metcalf.
Go ahead, Charlotte. Thank you.
Mr. Whitehead, who
yes,
is with us, also has been raising his hand, and I don't know whether he could be acknowledged.
Yes, Charlotte, I really appreciate that, and because I want to be sensitive to Joy, but also move on. So thank you, Charlotte, for your assist. I really appreciate it.
I'm not trying to shut out anybody.
Yes, we want to give equal time. You're exactly right.
For her, and I am very sorry that it's reached this point, and we all need to follow up on this. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. Sean, do you have a comment? Shano, I'm sorry. Can you state your name and locatable address and make your public comment for us?
Thanks so much. I was struggling not finding the little raise hand button and stuff. So thanks so much.
Can't hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Barely. Just get closer.
Is my volume up? Can I do that? How's that?
Just come a little closer to us, yeah, or the screen.
Anyway, how's this? Is it okay?
We're good, yeah.
There you are.
So what I wanted to say is a couple of things. One, thanks to you. Thanks, Roger, and thanks to the board for setting it up, and to Rod for the explanation. I love that. And Mary, I just really couldn't agree more with what you said about the position we're in, and well, specifically about the town stuff, just that the difficulty of choosing places and all of that. And then Mary, just the overarching reality that we have to set ourselves up to act. On a very personal note, I want to say that some people feel these kinds of installations are ugly or cumbersome or whatever. I find them beautiful. First thing I find them, they speak about efficiency. It's moving forward. It's a world we want to live in. So I don't know what I can say of relevance other than I think they're beautiful, and Mary, I agree with, I think. And thank you to everybody. So just full support. And I'm sure I get that people will be worried about the details of all installations. I get it. It's complicated. But I really hope we find our way to doing it. I think we need to. So thank you so much. Just that.
Could I add one thing?
Go ahead, Charlotte. You would like to make a public comment? Yeah. Go ahead. And just say your name for all of us, okay?
Charlotte Metcalf. I live on Petrel Road in Norwich, and I have had solar for since 2000. And I was the person who initiated the article to not tax people for their solar energy. So it's been something that I've been behind for many years with my neighbor. Anyway, my neighbors. But I really do hate to see trees removed and replaced by solar. I really think that there is a reason we have to reflect on cutting down forests, which hold carbon for us, and planning for solar energy. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Any other comments from folks in Norwich? Otherwise, I'll then take Charlotte. I'm just going to unmute you if that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, you can just unmute yourself. Okay. Okay. So then we'll take. Go ahead, Chris Rimmer. Do you want to go?
This is Chris Rimmer. I live on Spring Pond Road, and I am a member of the Conservation Commission, and I am a professional ecologist, and I just want to make sure that the ecological implications of this project have been fully considered. I'm not deeply immersed in the process of regulatory approval of projects like this. I certainly think that solar has to be part of the mix to combat climate change. There's no question in my mind. But I have concerns about the values to wildlife of this property, its connectivity as a piece of habitat very close to our town center, contiguous forest block. And I concern myself with the fact that so many people have deep-seated and I think rational concerns about the project. None of them are frivolous, and I just wish and hope that there could be more careful consideration before a decision is made moving forward. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I would love to see a more public forum made available before we move ahead with this. That's all. Thank you.
Great. And just to be clear, there's no action proposed. We are making sure that this was a concern. We're telling people about how this has worked and what process we have followed, and communication is always something that we would like to improve. And hopefully this is a step in good faith to that, right? Claudette, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I put it down. It's
okay.
It was just repetition of, please contact the PUC, please contact A&R. There's a process that is in place for these projects. I'm not an ecologist. I can't begin to evaluate the effect on the local ecology. That's what A&R is there to do. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's important, and I believe that was the point that Marcia was making earlier as well. Any other comments from folks in Norwich? Okay, not seeing any. Brooke Dingledine, would you like to make a public comment?
Finally stuck with me. My name is Brooke Dingledine. I am an environmental attorney and energy attorney who has worked in the state of Vermont for 26 years. I worked for the firm of Valson, Giacomo, DeTora, McQuestion in Barrie. And I've been involved in Act 250 permitting my entire career. And when the 248 process came in to replace Act 250 and zoning, I began to do those types of projects as well. I have a question. If Mr. Francis is willing to answer it, great. If not, it would be rhetorical, I guess. But I'm curious as to how many Section 248 petition application processes that he has actually been through from start to finish at the Public Utility Commission in a contested case.
I feel I'm happy to keep that rhetorical, but I don't want to speak for Rod.
I think it's can only be understood as a rhetorical question.
Great. I disagree. Thank you.
Well, the reason why I ask is that I have no idea what he was describing in terms of what process that the town should be going through, the standards that he alluded to, the 248 process, how it works, who's involved, what real review that it gets. Everybody has said thumbs up because they've all done some kind of robust review. And you know that not to be true because you didn't do it yourself. You did some kind of review, but it isn't what your charts and your flow charts and steps and go this way or that way if it's yes or no. You have a town plan, and the reason why I'm very concerned about this, because a number of these neighbors are being left high and dry by the town. I would like you to look at the language of section 248, the state statute that talks about what the input of the town is all about. And actually, you're right. You're not wildlife biologists, and the A&R, do look into those issues, et cetera. But this blinders on and one section of your zoning ordinance, which actually isn't even complied with based on the application materials I've seen and what I've heard actually went on. So, while that's your entire focus, they haven't even presented all the materials or all of the demarcations and the site plans that you require on your own checklist. So if I may share my screen, if I can do so. Is that okay?
No, it's not actually.
Okay, well then I guess I'll read it to you verbally. So a lot of people have ease in understanding things when they can actually see the words that I'm going to read.
Well, we're happy to have you read it in 3 minutes, and then if you would like to submit it to correspondence and a subsequent packet, that would be fine. That's okay.
Well, okay, let me cut to the chase then. You're really not going to let me show anything? You can't let me show what the law is that you're not following? You're not going to allow me to do that?
We can see it. We can see it. Just go through it.
Excuse me, can you please make your comment in 3 minutes? Your screen is already shared. I don't have the technical ability to unshare it right now. So
okay, great. I didn't realize it was being shared.
Yeah, please make your comment in 3 minutes. Okay.
Well, I'm going to make the comment for each one of my clients for 3 minutes, if you don't mind. So I have a whole list of them, and I will tick them off one at a time.
Excuse me, please. And then at the end of your public comment, if it would be really helpful to let us know who your clients are, that would be also helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead, please make your comment.
Well, I'm not going to give you the laundry list of clients unless you give me 3 minutes for each client.
This is not what
so
we're
if you're
doing
only going to
here.
let me talk for 3 minutes, then let me get to it.
Go ahead. Thank you. Make your comment. Okay.
Before the PUC issues a certificate of public good, which is their decision, not the town, to weigh all of these factors, to look at all the criteria, and to make decisions based on input on all these different criteria that they have to figure out. And on each criteria, they have somebody that they want information from. They want information about orderly development from the town based on the town plan. Are there land conservation measures contained in your town plan? That is the question that the statute puts to you. It says here in B1, with respect to an in-state facility, it won't unduly interfere with the orderly development of the region, with due consideration having given to the recommendations of the municipal and regional planning commissions and the municipal legislative bodies. That's the planning commission in the town, the select board in the town, and the land conservation measures contained in the plan of any affected municipality. You have to go through that analysis and look at your town plan, not your zoning ordinance, to see if there are land conservation measures that are contained in that plan that govern this situation. That's your land use section. That land use section wasn't even pointed out by the applicant here. And in fact, in the materials they have before the PUC, they have 2 sentences of your town plan, 2 sentences that are provided under oath as all the information in the town plan that we have to comply with. Well, when they come to a town that's just rah-rah green energy, wherever it might go, regardless of what it looks like, regardless of not having been bait and switched on the site plan. There was one in December, which was very minimal. It's basically just showed, this one little row of, here it is. Can you see this screen?
You have 1 more minute.
Can you see this screen?
Not yet.
Can you allow me to do so? I just want you to see what Joy was talking about earlier, what she was actually sent in December. It was a teeny little sliver. And
yeah.
all of a sudden it morphed to a bigger one, and now it's even bigger. And the one that's before the PUC is not what they put before you in
Right.
July, and it's certainly not what was put before June as an abutter in December. Now, in addition to that, the actual statute has another
Wrap up.
consideration, and
Please
that
wrap
is there a clear written community standard that protects aesthetics
Please,
in
please wrap up.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to go to the PUC, and we're going to have to show good cause, and believe me, there's plenty, why your recommendation should be thrown in the garbage. And the problem for the town and for all of my clients who are now going to have to, they've had the town government turn their back on them, not consider what their positions are and how this is affecting them and what you're really supposed to be looking at and what recommendation you're supposed to be giving. Because when you do not follow the actual language of your plan, we know from the Public Utility Commission and from the Supreme Court that it's not worth the paper it's written on and will not be used.
I have to mute you. I'm sorry.
Roger, I'd like to give Brooke my 3 minutes. This is Mary Gorman, 504 Hawk Pine Road. I'd like to give her my 3 minutes, please.
I'm asking that Attorney Dingledine please wrap up. That's what I'm doing. So
please give her my 3 minutes. I think I can give her my 3 minutes as a text.
I will. We are here. This agenda item is to explain the process for how preferred siting is determined in the town of Norwich. We have discussed that. We have taken public comment, and I'm happy to finish the public comment from Brooke Dingledine. Okay. So please do so.
Okay.
We're not here. I don't know. I'm not sure what you're doing. I'm happy to welcome your public comment. But that's
Roger, just please
doing.
allow her to finish. Please be mature and professional here.
You
are so out of bounds.
I am trying to have equal time.
Roger, be quiet. Let her finish.
Claudette Brochu has her hand up. Please, Claudette, go ahead. Make your comment.
May I just finish? I can just wrap up. If you give me 30 seconds, I'll wrap up, please.
I have a board member who has her hand up, and I want to acknowledge her, and then you can wrap up. Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this comment period is getting way out of hand. I hear what people are saying, that they're great, they have concerns.
Right.
There is a process to follow when you have these types of concerns. And please don't, I would also ask that people please not use the chat, because it's very distracting. And I also don't think that this is the venue for it's getting out of hand. And as Rogers, I believe we have listened, and I would just like this board to move on.
Come on. Claudette, nobody reached out and met with the neighbors face to face.
You can have a public comment after Attorney Dingledine finishes hers.
There is a process that is set out in the net metering rule for what the developer has to follow. If the developer did not follow the steps in the process, that is also something that, we heard from Rod that we heard from our planning director that the developer followed the process. So if he didn't, this is the first I'm hearing of it. And, where we go from here, I don't know, maybe, but it's also something I would think that would need to go before the PUC if the developer did not follow the process.
So, look, I'm okay. So someone was finishing their comment. So we're going to finish that public comment. I'm going to give one more minute, and then if folks have other public comments, then that's great. Okay. So I'm just trying to work us through this agenda item. So go ahead, Brooke Dingledine, would you like to finish up your public comment?
Yes, I'd like to share my screen, please.
I'm not sure if you can do so, but if you can do so in 1 minute. I don't.
Well, I keep doing it and it keeps jumping off my screen like you're not allowing me or you're kicking me off. So I'd like to be able to share my screen. Are you seeing a picture?
Yes, yeah. No one is kicking you off. Go ahead and share your screen and make your 1 minute extended.
Okay, so in 1 minute, I'm appalled at how you have turned your back on your townspeople. The process that you're talking about, Ms. Brochu, in terms of the town is you should have talked with the butters. You should have made sure everybody that surrounds this had notice of this, had an opportunity to understand what you're looking at. Is this the same thing that they were sent? Yeah. And has the town plan been looked at? That is the review that the town is supposed to do and give a recommendation about the town plan. That's the job that's entailed. Now, in terms of the process at the PUC, I hope someday you have to yourself go through it, because you will spend $50,000 to $70,000 as a litigant, as an individual, or as a municipality trying to go through a project in a contested case, and that wasn't even a tough one. I have one that's been going for 3 years and has been up and down to the Supreme Court 3 times. And in that case, the town bowed out because they got sued by the developer because they wouldn't do what they wanted. So when you talk about, gee, there's a process and the world is perfect, there are thousands of these applications that go between this and towers that go before the Public Utility Commission and the Public Service Department, and they are very limited in their resources to be able to review each and every one of these. They rely on developers to be honest. And here you have a developer who is dishonest. They have been dishonest in this process. They have been dishonest in Randolph, saying that the town plan is perfectly fine and they should sail right through. And they completely ignored and omitted material facts, just like they did in this case. Over in Randolph, they did 25% steep slopes. There's a prohibition and you can't put a solar array there. And they said, oh, no, that's not in your town plan. And they hoodwinked them and they have hoodwinked you because you are so, and it's laudable that you want to create lots of solar, but not on a ridge line, not where it's going to look like this picture when the solar array gets there. That's not being a good neighbor to the people in Hanover. Great. Thank you very much for the time. Yes. And I implore you to, after the election, please put this on the agenda. Perhaps the election will change who are the decision makers here. And I think you owe at least some sort of vote to the people of this town as to whether or not you're willing to rescind or not, after you have an actual opportunity for people to come and present you with information, not just let people talk for 3 minutes and then dismiss them away.
Please
thank you very much.
You've talked for more than 3 minutes, and we thank you for your public comment. Okay, are there any other public comments?
Yeah, I've got my
hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real brief. I thought that was amazing. Yeah, Doug Wilberding, 1329 Turnpike Road. Thanks, Rob, for the reminder. I didn't get White Cloud's address when he spoke. Maybe we could get that later. But Brooke, that was amazing. And this was probably by far the most entertaining select board meeting ever. And I really appreciate all of your comments. I think you were spot on, Roger. You were really not professional in how you handled this. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. It's my job to make sure that everyone has equal time in the public comment period. That's all I was trying to do in good faith.
No, it wasn't about the timing.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? All right. Any further board discussion on this? Okay. I seem to have lost Marcia. I don't know if she's still with us. Oh no, there she is. I think I managed to unpin her. I'm so sorry, Marcia. There you are.
I've been here all along.
Yes, I know. I just unpinned you on my Zoom screen. Okay. Any other board discussion? Is there a motion that a board member would like to make?
Well, I would like to move that we review this because properly, I really do have concerns, and I have concerns about our neighbors and what the reality of the situation is. I think that a town plan that says, you know, the whole town is a preferred site is unique. I don't know of another town. Maybe there is another town that's done that, but you know, this is supposedly for preferred sites on brownfields and things. And we don't have them because we're Vermont. But I think we also need to remember that, you know, we do need to do something, but no matter what we do, it's not going to be enough for the climate change. And I think we need to not kill the environment in the process of trying to help the climate emergency, because we'll only speed the disaster. So I think a more balanced approach has to be adopted. And I think that what we have at the moment is going beyond what we should be doing. So I would like to review it.
So you began your comment with I move. So did you have
I move that we put this on the select board agenda for future in-depth review of the process.
What is this? Can you be clear?
The issue of solar siting and how we prepare a letter and how we notify the people in this town who could be affected.
So can you just repeat the motion for at least the benefit of Miranda who's recording? I'm sorry, just
Yeah.
for clarity. Yeah, and so we know.
I move that the board sets a future agenda item to more fully discuss the process of preferred siting in Norwich and to consider more aspects of environmental and climate concerns.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. I don't see a second.
Oh, really?
So thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Claudette. Is that a second? What do you have a comment?
No, I just want to not make any decisions tonight. I want to have some time to look at information again, and that in our standard agenda setting, if in our standard process for agenda setting, we either agree or not to do anything different. But what I think, Marcia, what I think you're speaking of is a change in the town plan, which can be done with vote or petition.
Great. So that motion failed. So now, but I want to wrap this up. Rod, I want you to summarize this. This is before the PUC. What does that mean for abutters who have rights? And what can you, in your capacity as planning director, do to assist neighbors in learning more information or even navigating the PUC website?
Thank you, Roger. So yes, the matter is before the Public Utility Commission. They have a website where you can view the documents and submissions, not just from the applicant, but parties to the proceedings. You can monitor when the hearings are conducted, and you can learn from the same website the process that you go through to submit public comment and be recognized. So if people need assistance being directed to the website or exactly what different requirements of the process are, they're welcome to email me and I'll facilitate their participation in the Public Utility Commission process.
Okay, that's great. So I'm going to move us on from this agenda item, and the next item on the agenda is a break. So let's take one for 10 minutes. I really appreciate everyone coming out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I hope everyone felt heard, and I hope that there was and that we've engaged in good faith in reviewing this process for everyone's benefit, and we appreciate the engagement. Okay. So let's take a 10-minute break. It's 8:48, so 8:58. Okay.
So people vote at town meeting day.
Okay.
The recording has stopped.
Okay, I think it's 8:58. I'll wait for folks to come back.
Roger,
Yes.
could I just say to you in this, before people come back, what a wonderful job you just did. I thought you handled that so well. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, thank you.
I know. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know who that was, but that's okay. Okay. All right. So we're all back. Yeah. So I can resume the meeting. Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Resuming this February 23rd Select Board meeting, 8:59. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of the report from the Article 36 Task Force. I am going to turn to Rob Gear to introduce this item to queue us up. Rob was our representative for this group, and thank you, Rob, for all your work and your additional meetings. So what is it that you would like to say, and then tell us who is presenting on behalf of the group?
Sure. You can, let me get back to here. The presenters are Jack Cushman and Aaron Lamperti, both members of the task force. We worked on the basis of a consensus of opinion to reach agreement on recommendations and report and so on. And I have to say that the members of the task force put in a great deal of research and came up with a lot of hard statistics with which we can look at our usage and how we can reduce it over time. So I'm very pleased to have served with them.
That's great. Thanks, Rob. So Aaron and Jack, what are some key findings that you want to report out of your report to us?
Roger, with Aaron's permission, I'll go first and be quick and less detailed and more of an overview. And Aaron has much better mastery of some of the details, probably because of his work on the Energy Committee and for other reasons. As Rob just said, the Article 36 Task Force worked on the basis of consensus. And I think everybody who's here and everybody who just left can acknowledge that it's not easy to build consensus around tough environmental issues, all the more on the rapid elimination of greenhouse gases that are produced whenever fuel's burned. But there's an overwhelming scientific consensus for rapidly phasing out emissions of carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels. Our group says that our priorities should go to eliminating sources first, where the solutions emerge first. And our ultimate goal has to be zero emissions within a very few decades. And that means zero consumption of fossil fuels, not just by the town government, but by everybody. These aren't arbitrary goals. They're premised on a well-documented global carbon budget. And when you think about your financial budgets, I would implore you to also bear in mind that we have a carbon budget. And when you bust the climate budget, a carbon budget, you establish a climate debt. Not my invention. It's a phrase that was used in a recent peer-reviewed article by some of the leading scientists and economists on this issue in Nature magazine. The best solutions to these problems offer important co-benefits. Beyond climate benefits, they include cutting local smog, soot, toxic pollution, and it's why we have to modernize our furnaces and engines in ways that protect public health. This is a public health consensus that's recognized by every major public health establishment. Now, locally, we've found that we need to aggressively address both our buildings and our fleet of vehicles and equipment. We also found that solutions are already widely available and proven for buildings, much more so than for vehicles. but they're rapidly advancing and promising for vehicles. And so your job is the kind of prudent planning that will allow us to move quickly where solutions are already available and to adopt new technologies as soon as they arrive. We found that Tracy Hall needs decisive action. I'm aware that it's also a good example of how elusive consensus can be. And I may be naive, but I'm hoping for a genuine effort to reach a consensus that gets the job done. Without consensus, nothing is going to get done. Now, federal and state contributions could make that considerably easier. We already have our hands on federal money, some of which may go to this purpose, and the state has underway legislative consideration of important financing for municipalities to make exactly the kind of shifts that we're talking about. But our group feels that it also makes sense to borrow prudently to invest in our climate priorities, especially when the investments partially pay for themselves and offer important co-benefits. We have concluded that you should make climate changes a top priority in town decisions, and specifically that all major actions should include an express climate impact statement. Doesn't have to be an elaborate document. We don't want teams of lawyers involved. What we want to do is to ensure that we're thinking about the climate impacts. And I see a lot more evidence today of this kind of consideration by all of you than I did when I moved here almost 48 months ago. You're used to hearing from people who lived here 48 years. Article 36 focused on what's under your control, the direct municipal use of fossil fuels. Partly, as I said to you at the time, because that's easy to measure. We also need economy-wide reductions in households, businesses, indirect consumption, transportation, land use, development planning. That's not what Article 36 is about. And if we intend to meet our climate goals, we cannot trade these off against each other. Norwich, we strongly believe, should be a local leader and a statewide example of responsible action. But we can only achieve that together. And above everything, we need to seek common ground, listen to each other, and achieve climate action. So Aaron's going to go into more of the details. I really appreciate the opportunity and the experience of doing this, and I continue to learn a lot and wish you all well in our common endeavor. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. And Aaron, you're straight to you.
All right. If it's all right with you, I will share a couple of slides or a handful of slides.
You can share your screen.
All right. So Jack already talked a bit about some of this. Just to set the stage, we are already committed at various levels to the goals of Article 36 through Article 36 itself, which was passed in March of 2019 through the Norwich Selectboard statement resolution on declaring a climate emergency from October of also 2019. Then the Vermont Global Warming Solutions Act commits the state to legally to quite a large reduction by 2050. And of course, we all know that the problem is substantial and only growing worse. Here is the base. We chose as a baseline year for the town's fossil fuel consumption, 2019, partly because that was the first year that we had really reasonably complete data, and also because it was the last year before COVID hit. So we thought it was a better baseline than a COVID year. This is a breakdown by building and then by fuel type or by department of our stationary and our mobile combustion. Just fossil fuel, as Jack pointed out, Article 36 is just about fossil fuel consumption. So this is not talking about any other aspect of carbon emissions for the town, which would be such, the embodied carbon in everything the town does. This is just direct fossil fuel consumption in town buildings and vehicles. Here's another view of it. This view shows that 3 years of data, the fiscal year 2019, which is in blue, is what we're calling the baseline year. Then green and gray for 2020 and 2021. Fairly soon, we will have 2022 to add to this. You can see in the total on the far right that consumption dropped for 20 and 21, something like 5%, which would be what we're looking for Article 36. However, I suspect that drop is really COVID related and not due to any major change in town consumption. If you look at the diesel and gasoline sections, just to the left of the total, you can see that a lot of the drop is diesel, and then for 2020, and then in 2021 there was a bit of a switch between gasoline and diesel. So most of this is in the fleet. The town buildings largely flat across these 3 years. I suspect that when we get out of the COVID restrictions, probably that fuel use will come back up. Of course, we are always making other changes, and hopefully we can start to see a real negative trajectory here. So we came up with a set of immediate recommendations that we think should be enacted in the next year or so to get us back on track to our approximately 15% reduction that we should be at for 2022. That would be 5% a year from the year that Article 36 was passed, 2019. So that would be something on the order of 50. We should be somewhere on the order of 15% for the fiscal year 22. Two policies that we are recommending. We would suggest that the town establish a green procurement team, and we have a draft policy to that effect in the report in Appendix C. The team would do one of the things the team would do is what Jack alluded to, writing and researching environmental impact statements for all major purchases, and it would also, and I think I'll mention this again later, maintain the database of greenhouse gas emissions and monitor the progress towards Article 36 goals and report to the Select Board at least annually on that progress. We also think that the green procurement team would be a logical entity to begin the process of aligning all town policies and practices with the goals of Article 36. Exactly what that looks like, obviously, would be a long process, but impact statements, for example, are an example of the sorts of things. If every purchase requires a statement of carbon emissions to go with that purchase, will have a powerful effect on the choices that we make. Data collection, it turns out that we have very little data that we could find or get our hands on the actual usage of various vehicles, in particular the DPW fleet. The police and fire fleets both have some data, but the DPW really that we could get our hands on has almost nothing. And we think all of these vehicles should be tracked, ideally, in quite great detail. And there are services that will do that. Say you can contract for a year or some period of time to get details and install actual monitoring devices. And with that kind of a data, we could really nail down which vehicles are the highest priorities, and then do the kind of research that we will need to do to find some sort of replacement strategy in the years coming. On the infrastructure front, we have 3 recommendations. We believe strongly that the highest priority is to replace the heating and ventilation and cooling system in Tracy Hall, which is deficient on the ventilation front and is at end of life on the boilers. And obviously, this is a process we went through before. The town supported it, and then in the face of the global pandemic, withdrew their support. And I think that that support will only probably be stronger now if we're to revisit this question, especially in the light of substantial amounts of federal and perhaps state funding to assist us. We also think that the office and conference spaces at the DPW could might well benefit in a very short term from heat pumps to heat and cool those spaces independently of the apparatus bay. This would be obviously not an immediate, well, this would be something we need to look at with a contractor. And we didn't do that, but that was something that we felt might be a very quick and easy low-hanging fruit. Third, we have a report from our energy coordinator, a regional energy coordinator, on replacing police cruisers with electric alternatives. It's in Appendix D of the report, and we recommend that we revisit the decision to replace 2 of the cruisers with hybrids and seriously consider extending the life of the current cruisers until we're ready to go all electric with some of them. This I know is too small to really read effectively on the screen. It's an attempt at a very, very early 20-year timeline for reaching zero fossil fuel use and direct fossil fuel use. So what we have here is a list of vehicles and buildings and their an estimate of their fraction of the town's fossil fuel consumption, a year to replace them, and a very basic line for what you might consider replacing them with, for like, so it says EV or heat pumps or something like that. This is really only suggestive. There's, as I said, there's really no data on all the DPW vehicles, which is the bulk majority of these lines. Without that data, we can't really realistically do this exercise, but it does get us to 99.7% elimination by 2040. And spreads it out over the time. So it's really there to illustrate the sort of process that we're going to need to go through. And this is going to be a 20-year process, and it's going to need to be, really attended to. It's not a one-off, something we're going to do now and be done with. Implementation. So at our last meeting, the task force offered or agreed to offer to the select board that we would continue for some period of time to help implement these recommendations, come up with contractor bids, reports, whatever you might want to use us to do to forward implementation. And then again, as I said here, we believe that once you've established a green procurement team, they should be the ones to take over this sort of implementation process, and that they should update the greenhouse gas inventory, the timeline that we just saw, and annually report on progress towards the Article 36 goals. So that's really what I have for the really down and dirty description of the report, added to Jack's high-level stuff. And I think if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks so much, Aaron. Do board members have questions?
I just wanted to add a comment. I was really excited. I guess that's kind of geeky, but anyways, I was really excited to see the list of vehicles and their expected lifespan, the percentage of fossil fuel use that is possible but could be refined much more. And it clearly reminded me of our capital improvement plans and trying to track more accurately when these resources are going to need to be replaced and how we should start saving for that event. But in general, the statistics that we came up with, and especially Eva and Aaron, were illuminating as we were comparing what the reality of the situation was with what I had, for instance, perceived as being highest priority going forward. There are some things that can be attacked and have a big payback, like Tracy Hall, but a huge part of the fossil fuel usage is just transportation, and the sooner that we can figure out a way to convert, the better.
Sure. Mary? You're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay.
I appreciate how systematic the report is in its approach. And I like the emphasis. I like the time charts, like the capital planning that's in there, and also the emphasis on policy, the greenhouse and the green team. I like all of it. I was kind of intrigued by the fact that electric vehicles don't depreciate as much, and they don't wear out as fast. So you have to pay more up front, but then you can keep them longer. And then over, say, an 8-year span instead of a 5-year span, you're actually paying less. I thought that was enlightening for me to see. I'm a little disappointed that Tesla doesn't come up with a slightly, a vehicle without a glass roof and a vehicle that might have a little more clearance. It seems to me that maybe there might be demand for electric police cars somewhere in the US, maybe just like the Ford pickup trucks that are now wildly popular. Maybe there'll be a little more movement in the car and truck industry to come up with something that's a little more suitable for a police car. So, and I just think the minute you get all the lawnmowers and all that sort of small equipment turned to electric, the better. Even though it's small stuff, to me, just whack that. Get the weed whackers all electric, and clear that out. To me, that's low hanging fruit.
Okay. Jack, did you want to respond to something? And then I think Aaron did
Yes,
too.
please. I'll be very brief, but one of the most impressive things that strikes me as we survey the landscape on vehicle technology is there's a tidal wave of electric vehicles of all stripes coming along. And you saw for the first time this year, if any of you happen to watch the Super Bowl, there were a dozen electric vehicle ads. I never saw electric vehicle ads on TV before. Clearly, the manufacturers are going this way. In terms of heavy duty equipment, you need to read technical literature and trade press to get a sense of that. But those are coming too. And the trick for you is going to be to time the retirement of existing things to the availability of reasonably priced or affordable replacements. And remember that we're talking about 20 years, and things change a lot in this technology in the coming 20 years. So we shouldn't scoff at the idea of an electric fire truck because there's not one today, or if there is one today, it's in Hollywood. We're not Hollywood. Okay, 2 now, says Aaron. But that doesn't, Boeing says they're going to have an electric airplane. So I don't believe there's never going to be an electric fire truck. So it's a matter of phasing this in and being reasonable. And I think when we sit down together as a community and sort these things through and set aside some of our preconceptions, that we'll find that there's still plausible outcomes for this very ambitious target.
Okay, then Aaron, and then I have a question, and I'm sure Claudette and Marcia do too.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on the question of purpose-built police cruisers, that's certainly coming. I think Neil Fulton is on this call. We were talking about it a day or two ago, and he was saying that there's likely to be a electric Ford Explorer on the F-150 platform within a few years. That would be ideal for a purpose-built police cruiser, and also the electric, apparatus, fire apparatus. There are 2 companies currently prototyping apparatus in the United States and more around the world. So it's not impossible. Battery technology and other technologies are moving very fast. So it's in the report is the suggestion that we make an effort to maintain, refurbish, extend the life of existing fossil fuel vehicles where we believe that within a few years beyond the life of that vehicle, an electric alternative might become available, so that we don't purchase a fossil fuel vehicle now and then have it for its full life, when we could, when part of that time might be an alternative available. That would be certainly the case for fire apparatus. Might also be the case for police apparatus.
So I want to actually, that follows to my question, if I may, forgive me, board members. So I'm struggling with sort of the efficacy of possibly spending money on something that does data collection, because the fleet is small. In some ways, the data may confirm what it is that we already know to be true. And so, while data is important to demonstrate a process, it also comes at costs, onboarding, and other demands. So I guess, what would we need data to determine? I guess, can you speak to a little bit more of what would a telematics system do really for us, given the size and scope of our fleet? And then because I am interested in this idea of carbon being integrated into life cycle costs. We do know that we have a replacement schedule for our police cruisers as every 10 years, right? Fielding on a very high level says it's penciled in that way. A decade is a sufficient time to be responsive to the new market for these police vehicles, for example. But I'm trying to understand how data collection, replacement schedules, and costs of carbon and life cycle costs can be a conversation. So does it make sense to spend money on something that collects data, I guess might be the question.
Yeah. Well, so we can do data collection on the fleet at different levels. So at the very basic level, currently the fire apparatus and the police, we know at least how many gallons of fuel they're using per month. That and we don't even have that for DPW. If you add some of the features of telematics, you now know not only how many gallons of fuel are going into a vehicle, but how many miles it's traveling, what patterns it might be following. You might be able to see more efficient ways for the vehicle to do its function. I'm not by any means an expert. I have not ever done a telematics project, and I think that I agree that I don't know what the kind of cost would be, and I don't know what the benefits would be. But I think, in general, data collection can lead to surprising, unexpected efficiencies. So if we just say, okay, well, which vehicle do we use the most? It's that one over there. Okay, we'll replace that one first. Then we know what we're going to get. But if we do data collection, we might well find some surprising lower hanging fruit or more or greater efficiencies. So, but it is a matter of weighing with cost, and we would obviously have to get some estimates from some companies to get some sort of idea of what that cost would be.
Right, because it's both GPS and sort of I think there's a hardware and a software for the vehicles, and then obviously some dashboard that would, yes.
Well, there's probably a variety of levels of ways to do various kinds of things. So that would be the kind of thing that if you wanted the task force to look into it further, we would be willing to do that, or you might see some better way to do that, some other entity. But we would be willing.
Okay, that was my question. Jack, and then I want board member.
Just quickly, I would say I'm not persuaded that a high-tech solution is needed. I think that if you had a notebook in every vehicle and the driver or whoever puts gas in the vehicle notes the date and the time and how much gas, you could get some data pretty quickly that would at least point you in a direction. Right now, we just take the number of vehicles and divide it by the overall fuel pump use and assign it to each vehicle. So a simple solution might provide a lot, 80% of the data that you want.
Right, and it could, and that's like a management decision, right? That's a directive.
That's right. Well, the task force can't be deciding that.
Exactly. So, okay, thank you for that. Any other board members have questions or comments? Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's really important at this point with Chris Kaufman on board to establish a goal with him and with clearly with Rod that this is an important thing that we're trying to do, that it isn't just like a cute optional thing for a wealthy white town in Vermont. It's critical that he be thinking, Rod be thinking, when in every junction, what can save us from emitting more greenhouse gases, what can cut down on fossil fuel usage. And unless we get buy-in from everybody, it's not going to happen well.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Marcia.
We do have a procurement policy that says that, you know, at the outset, and maybe one of the things we do is make sure that that gets distributed. But I have one sort of question and one sort of global comment. First of all, it was a well done report, so kudos to everyone. The climate's getting hotter, obviously, despite whatever we do. And I'm thinking that when I was reading this report, it looked like even though heat pumps were recommended, cooling was not recommended. Now, I don't know, but I've got heat pumps in my house and they cool and they heat. So maybe I've got something else, but it seems to me that dismissing the idea of cooling in Tracy Hall, if we do something there, is problematic. And then my sort of global comment is it may well be that the board wants to institute a green procurement team, and it would probably be helpful because, I mean, even that chart that sort of mirrors what we've done with our capital structuring, that's very helpful to get our heads around what exactly is out there and usefulness and usage. But I would be very worried about anything that would supplant the decision making of the board, and which to me includes as much information as possible. So I'm happy to get information that's in digestible forms with recommendations, but it should never be anything that filters the information that the board is getting, because then I don't think we're doing our duty.
Sure. And which is in part why Rob was there. He doesn't speak for the group, but like he benefits from being in two spaces, right?
But if we get this process going in the future, I think that has to be part and parcel.
Aaron, did you have? Well,
yeah,
hold on. Like, actually, hold on, Aaron. Sorry, I want to. But do you have a question? I keep going back and forth.
No, I don't think so. But it's one of those global. When you're listening to people talk and comment, as we are warming, it's would also probably get to the what types of vehicles do we need, and does what we have now will that meet the needs 10 years from now? Will we need as many snow plows? I don't know. You know, and that's all of this. Although what they said, we will probably get snowier winters, but that's all of the, I guess I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not articulating it very well, but anyway.
I think what I heard, what's helped, their comment made me think that this also needs to be paired with like a proper asset inventory too. Like, right, like we have to ensure that the DPW director makes sure that all of these vehicles currently have a useful life to the town. Like we're assuming that all of the vehicles we have like are needed, right? But that could be that before we electrify like everything, we should make sure that like what we have is important to the work.
Yeah, really, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, so Aaron, go ahead. You wanted to address maybe both Marcia and Claudette's point?
Yeah. Heat pumps, I know the name has the word heat in it, but they can pump heat into a building and they can pump heat out of a building. That's what you have, Marcia. Now, why you have cooling is because the heat pump goes both ways. That would be true for, certainly for if we converted Tracy Hall to heat pumps. Where you get the cooling would be a design decision. You might not want to cool the entire gym to, 58 degrees. That would be very expensive. But cooling comes with heat pumps. It's one of the side benefits. Your second comment, remind me.
Was about the
procurement team. Yeah. So when we, Jeff Martin wrote or edited the draft that we put in the report, and we talked a bit about the chain of command or the authorities in there. And what we decided was that the procurement team would make recommendations and things, purchase decisions, or not decisions, but purchase requests would go through the procurement team. The town manager would sit on the team, but that the town manager would bring all those decisions to the select board for actual, all those requests to the select board for actual decisions. The procurement team wouldn't make decisions, it would only make recommendations. That's the way it's written now, of course, obviously that's just a draft, but that we had that thought in mind.
Okay.
Oh, and then Claudette, yes, of course. One of the advantages of telematics, I believe, over simply keeping track of fuel would be that you might get a little insight into how useful each vehicle is as a matter of practicality, not just how much fuel it uses. Is it being run every week to, move the trash back and forth, or something like that, which maybe there would be a better way to do, or as opposed to something that's really serving an important function.
Great. Okay. I see some comments, but go ahead, Jack.
Roger, I would like to.
Yeah.
Roger, I would like to respond briefly to what Claudette said about the warming and the snow.
Yeah.
We are always, at least in my lifetime, we're going to continue to have big snowstorms in Vermont. Climate change doesn't happen that quickly. It is striking how hot it's going to get in Vermont on the path that we're on. Within my lifetime, there will be maybe 60, 90 degree days every summer, and you're really going to want Tracy Hall to be air conditioned. A solution to Tracy Hall that replaces a boiler on fossil fuels does nothing for its air conditioning. A solution that replaces the boilers with biofuels does nothing for your air conditioning. A heat pump solution, whether it's ground sourced or air sourced, provides air conditioning. Now, the other thing is the climate changes more slowly than our equipment turns over, by and large. It takes 20 years to notice a big change in the climate. Your truck has come and gone during that period. However, the decisions that you make today have their effect on climate immediately. It just takes 20 years for them to show up. The decisions that have to be made to avoid catastrophe can't wait until the catastrophe has arrived. You have to make profound decisions rapidly now to avoid these changes that are going to happen 10, 20, and 30 years down the road, which many of which are already locked in by our past errors. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to take some public comments. Oh, go ahead, Claudette. Sorry.
Yeah, it reminds me. Just what would be, as an interim, the benefit of going to a biodiesel vehicle where there's not an electric option available currently, but maybe could that biodiesel bridge you away from pure diesel?
you would have to yeah. So Aaron, do you want to answer that question for Claudette?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at it. One other way to think about where we're at right now is that we really need to stop burning things for heat or for run our buildings and our cars. And biodiesel doesn't help at all. It sounds like it should be a renewable resource because the carbon came out of the atmosphere, 10 years ago or last year and is going back in. But in fact, if you do the modeling and the math and you think about all the fossil fuel inputs that go into the process of creating the biodiesel and transporting it and everything else, it is at best a very small benefit, and in many cases, in fact, is worse than electrification. Or biofuels more broadly are often worse than electrification. They're saying this now very strongly about ethanol. Wood in general is not sustainable. It would have been if we started growing those forests 50 years ago and said, okay, these forests are for heating Tracy Hall. But we didn't do that. And now we pretend that we're doing that. We're just pushing it off 50 years. Well, 50 years from now is too long. So we're past the point where biofuels are a solution. They are actually, and in most cases, worse than burning natural gas or propane.
Okay.
Roger, if I may just chime in.
Sorry. So, Jack, Claudia has a
just to follow up. Okay. So I'm thinking about our DPW fleet, the big trucks, like the Freightliners, where I believe in the next couple of years we're going to be looking at replacing one or two, one for sure. Would that going to a biodiesel Freightliner because there's no electric option available?
I believe that the thing to do, my belief about it is the thing to do is refurbish that Freightliner, keep it for a couple more years, and then buy an electric when the electric becomes available. Buying another diesel or running it on biodiesel are not particularly running it on biodiesel is not going to be particularly helpful. Buying another one, you're only going to you're sort of blocking yourself into some sort of diesel style fuel for 20 years or for the life of the vehicle. Better to refurb it with an eye to replacing it with something. It could be hydrogen that is the ultimate replacement. It might not be battery electric. We don't really know what's going to win the market, but something will, or else, we'll not make our climate goals. So I think that we should, sort of hold on and then go electric when we can, or go alternate basically when we can, carbon free.
So Jack, if I may, only if you have something new to add, because I want to go to Rod real quick, and then I want to take public comment. So
if I could take 10 seconds and read what the European Science Advisory Board says on biofuels generally, not effective in mitigating climate change and may even increase the risk of dangerous climate change.
Okay. Yes, thank you. That was okay. So Rod, we're having this discussion. Do you have any sort of high level comment? Obviously, we just got our new DPW director. Do you have any high level comment about where you see the fleet and the department? None of us have talked about Tracy Hall. I think we know that that's a big separate conversation. But Rod, can you say anything about sort of what you know about the fleet, the sort of the asset inventory? Like, how primed really are we ready for some of the things that we're talking about today? And then, yeah, you get my question.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about Tracy Hall at a future point. I think it presents us with a number of challenges. I noticed that Neil's here, and I'm sure he can relate the challenges that he had when he sat where I do now. On the fleet question and the monitoring or analysis of patterns of use and greenhouse gas emissions, Fielding, Chris and I have already spoken. We obviously have been really busy. We're hoping that the other side of town meeting, when things calm down a little bit, the three of us can get together and look with more care at how the budget could incorporate data on greenhouse gas emissions or just the carbon footprint of our fleet as part of the budgetary process, the financial budgetary process. That gets back to, I think it might have been Jack's original remark. And then in the short term, we need to fill in some data gaps. The only vehicles using gasoline that are fueled from the tanks, the underground storage tanks at
the garage.
The garage parking, sorry, the highway garage, are 2 pickups associated with DPW and the police cruisers. We don't have really good data on gasoline usage broken out by car or vehicle, but we hope to do that. And then the diesel fleet, which is extensive, that also needs to be thought of. And I think that the question about telematics might be a bit moot in the sense of 2 things. One is you need good cell phone reception to make telematics work, because that's how GPS works. And then it's kind of hours of use of a loader or a backhoe more than distance that it travels. But with we can implement data collection pretty much as Jack suggested, which is, in the morning you're gonna read out the number of hours on the dial or the number of miles, and when you bring it back at the end of the day, you're gonna write down in another box how many hours you did, or how many miles you drove, or both, as relevant. Then we are going to match that against diesel consumption, and try and get a much better estimate or much better tracking of fuel usage across the DPW fleet. All the diesel vehicles that I'm familiar with are fairly new in the sort of technology sense, and that have the federal regulatory clean diesel motors fitted to them. As time goes by, they've gotten better, but I would acknowledge that it's still diesel. Chris and Fielding and I are all interested in getting a better handle on how the fleet works and how much fuel it consumes and what we can do to reduce that. The police cruiser, the hybrid, is 47% more efficient than the all fuel cruiser that it replaced, and the new RAV4 that will replace the administrative vehicle will be 122% more efficient than the vehicle that replaces. And we expect to be in a situation where once cruisers that are suitable for the conditions in Norwich are all electric, that we could contemplate, with the board's permission, we would present to the board at that moment what the financial analysis would be, as well as the environmental analysis, so that if there was a viable alternative within 4 or 5 years, even though we've made a 10-year commitment, it could be financially and environmentally appropriate to switch out of a hybrid vehicle to an all-electric vehicle if the appropriate vehicle is available. I would say that the data is, the stories around Teslas and other all-electric vehicles are compelling, but we don't see them utilized too frequently in settings such as ours, with very small fleets where the one vehicle needs to do a lot of different tasks. So in summary, I really appreciate the report of the group. It's been really informative presentation. I think there's lots of opportunity for us to collect the data and fill in those data gaps and give the board and the community more information about what's going on. Focusing on the fleet initially, but I think that the buildings are also primed for more review. Right. I think that the last part, which is a really funny part and didn't really come up, it doesn't, I don't know how well known this is. It's sort of an anecdote, but UPS at some point banned left-hand turns of their fleet, and then monitored a more than 20% reduction in fuel use because they just banned left-hand turns. So you can do really tiny things in your behavior and your habits that reduce the amount of time that you're doing certain kinds of things and get environmental benefits. We've not done any kind of analysis of which direction do we drive, or how do we organize our snowplow routes, or anything else to do with DPW. But there are potentially benefits there in terms of the way we do our work as much as what we do our work with. The last part would be all the small motors. I think Colette made the point that going to electric as soon as, or Mary made the point about going electric as soon as possible. Yeah, we would look at that. And there's been dramatic improvements there too.
Okay, that's great. So, all right, so I'm going to take, if that's okay with the board, some public comment. Thank you for, I think we had 2 public commenters. So Will, can you just state your name and locatable address for us? And then Neil Fulton, and then Pam Smith. So go ahead, Will.
Hey, Will Smith, 1445 New Boston Road. I have several things to say. It's my understanding that there are some towns that have already achieved everything you're trying to achieve. I wonder if you've been talking with them. I think Burlington is one of them. On the topic of what Rod was just saying about collecting data on these vehicles, GPS can track the location, the operation of these vehicles and how much they're consuming and how hard they're working can be collected aboard a truck, for example. So, I don't think cell phones have anything to do with that. They're not needed. Just track the vehicle with GPS, collect the data on board, then you can download that later and into your database. On another topic, years ago I designed a structure, a house, where during the winter it would actually collect snow, slide down a sloping roof, get collected in an underground collection area, and then capped over in the spring. And you would have snow and ice all summer, and just take a small fan to circulate that cool air into a home or even a commercial building. And of course, I never built one of these, but I also saw a structure where they had a massive slab. They had dug a big hole, filled it full of large stones, ran pipe all through those stones, then a really thick slab, and then a long sloping translucent side facing to the south. That building had no heat whatsoever and never got colder than 50 degrees during the winter. And the winters back then, this is probably 30 years ago, were much colder than what they are now. And anyways, I'd like to see you reach out to these towns that have really achieved what you're looking for now. And I bet they have collected a lot of data. Some of them I hear have reached 100%, the green goal. And I wonder if you have reached out or if you will. That's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I think Neil Fulton, and then I'm collecting questions, and hopefully, if we have time, we'll come back. So the next, I think Neil Fulton, you're on deck. Thank you.
A couple quick points. One on the issue of data. The existing system at Public Works, where we track which vehicle is using it, was put in, I think it was in the late 1990s. I was on the select board then. We didn't have much money, so we went with the basic system where each vehicle has a key. We didn't have enough keys for all the equipment we had, so we relied upon the department head and the operators to record the data. That system is, I think, probably reached its useful life. It would be, I think, appropriate to replace that with some sort of system where each vehicle has a card. That way you'd be recording it very accurately, and adding other stuff in from the standpoint of hours and things like that would be difficult once you computerize that. The second thing is I own a Sprinter-based RV. It already has telemetrics in it. I think we're going to see that become more and more common on fleet type of vehicles where it's built right into the system. So Mercedes certainly has that system. The police SUV, the preferred cruiser is really the SUV, not the sedan. I think the state police found that when they put sedans in SUVs in operation. By far, the uniformed officers who were carrying all that equipment on the belt hated the sedans, and they loved the SUVs. And so, as you know, Ford is investing billions of dollars in electrifying their fleet. They currently have built some fully electric Explorers, and the production of those will be in either 2023 or 2024. So that's really not far away. And that type of vehicle can be purpose built. They've also purpose built some in the UK, built on an all electric Mustang. So that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. They've made that commitment. From the standpoint of fire, we provided you quite a bit of information on that. Oshkosh is a big producer of motorized equipment, including fire. And Madison right now is trying out, it's a hybrid. It's going to be difficult to get to fully electric. You've got things like refueling and things like that. But it's a hybrid, and probably 90% of the activities the department is involved in, of course, Madison runs a lot more than Norwich, is on electric. And it's only in a long event, when you're pumping for a long time, that you use the diesel. So it's a hybrid that would significantly reduce the carbon footprint of the department. And the other thing is, on public works, that's going to be tough. But right now, the heavy trucks in public works are M2s, like Freightliner. They've already made one, what they call an EM2 that's fully electric. I don't think it's suitable for the type of work. It's for a box truck. It's suitable for the type of work that our public works department does. But certainly that's an area that's going to be evolving, I think probably rapidly, because of the demand that we have for fully electric, or at least hybrid electric vehicles in some of the bigger trucks.
Okay, thanks, Neil Fulton. We appreciate the institutional knowledge, right? And I know that Aaron has benefited, and the rest of the committee has benefited from your participation and reaching out. So thank you. All right, so Pam Smith, I think you are next.
Thank you. Pam Smith, 1445 New Boston Road. Since the Article 36 was passed in March of 2019, there have been a number of purchases of fossil fuel vehicles, March of 2020, May of 2020, and then again the fire truck in May of 2021. And these are purchases that have, pretty long lifespans. And so I'm curious as to how someone like Aaron, who's a captain in the fire department, but also on the energy committee and on the Article 36 task force, views this kind of disconnect between working toward having everything fossil fuel free, and yet here we are buying a $500,000 fire truck that's diesel. And the other question that I have is, since we're looking at maybe going all electric on many of these vehicles, what is the town thinking in terms of the town having more solar that maybe it directly owns? Because otherwise we're going to have some pretty amazing light bills if we don't own solar, so that we can generate the power to recharge these vehicles.
Yes. Okay. Thanks so much. I want to get to the question we heard earlier. Aaron, gosh, like Zoom this evening has like really been the best to me. I'm trying to find you to pin you. There you are. So can you talk about sort of the general research approach that the committee took, right? Like obviously you worked with documents provided by the town manager's office to assess, to like have the existing like asset list, right? But you benefited from Eva Rosenblum's past greenhouse gas inventory. What other sort of broader research, if any, was done to inform your work?
Let's see. So, I mean, the greenhouse gas inventory is a big piece of it. As you say, from the staff, the data, utility bills, and that sort of thing. We worked with the the regional energy coordinator, Jeff Martin, on a couple of chapters of or appendices that you see, and he also attended most of our meetings. Was a valuable resource. The process that we undertook didn't so much have to do with researching a lot of specific solutions, because we figure that's really the next step. What our process had to do with was identifying the sources of fossil fuel use, trying to quantify them as best we could, and then general solutions, and then prioritizing. And the way we prioritized the solutions we basically took the committee members and gave everyone a blank piece of paper and said, what are your priorities? And then we compiled those and used that as a guide. We sought public input throughout and got some and incorporated it. So I would say this is not a super researched technical document. And I think that's clear already from the discussion tonight that, that there's lots of technical work yet to do, but it's really more of a impetus and an overview and a kind of hopefully community prioritization.
Right.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. So like case studies in other municipalities weren't necessarily part of your scope.
Oh, well, for the police cruisers, we certainly looked into that. We didn't. No, I think in many ways we didn't say go and look at what is Burlington doing. Burlington is a totally different town with totally different priorities, public transportation, many, many more buildings, totally different kind of scale of fleets. And so what we were looking at was what does Norwich actually do, and where as a town, capital T, and what do we think, and the people who chose to join our meetings and offer their insights think is the highest priorities.
Okay, great. Any other board member questions? Yeah, no, that's helpful. Any other board member questions or comments on this report? Obviously, like we didn't talk about buildings, right? There's future discussion for sure. Okay, the only thing I would like to add is people have reached out to me and said, what is the Article 36 task force? So we might want to rename y'all to be a little more illustrative of what it is you do. Either it's the climate emergency task force, or or should the task force even sort of continue on at all. But it was illustrative to me in the last few weeks for people to say, what is Article 36 and what is this task force? And then of course they would go and find the report and say like, oh, that's pretty good. But it's Article 36 from 2019 was a while ago, so we should have your name maybe reflect the goals of Article.
Yeah, well, and I think there's the question of the green procurement team or whatever body you choose to be the ongoing body that maintains that keeps the data rolling and keeps the recommendations rolling, and that shouldn't be the article. It shouldn't be called Article 36 at that point. It needs a new name. I agree.
Okay. Anything else from folks, or we'll move on, and we'll thank this brilliant work, right? Okay. So to be continued.
Thank you to the group for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay. Oh gosh. Okay, we're still on. We're still here in the midst. Okay. So the rule requiring. So we're going to move on. Thanks, and obviously we'll have continued follow up. Rule requiring wearing face coverings indoors in public spaces. We're asked to reauthorize the rule through March 25th. Why don't we begin with a motion, and we'll discuss it in the discussion.
Okay, I move to extend the rule requiring wearing face coverings indoors in public spaces for an additional 30 days through March 25th, 2022.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, made by Mary, seconded by Claudette. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mary.
I think that the case rate is coming down, but not quite enough. I think I looked it up for Windsor County. It's like 7%. I'm sure Claudette has even better statistics. And I'm thinking at least one more iteration of this would be good. So.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I'm Claudette.
And, I must say I was, I didn't look up the data today. I can't remember why, but I also, they are coming. I do know the case counts are coming down. I do know our positivity rate is coming down. Our hospitalizations are coming down, but we're still in the middle of winter. And I am in support of extending this for another 30 days and hopefully there will be no other variants popping their ugly head up.
Well, yes.
But yeah.
Okay.
Let's go another 30, and then if things are continuing to look good, and by then hopefully we can open some windows.
Okay.
I know that might be optimistic, but
I'll take it. Any other comments, or should I, call the question? Okay, I'll roll call. Okay, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marcia? Oh, you're unmuted.
Muted.
Sorry, abstain just for language.
Okay, Claudette?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. All right. I don't know how we feel about 10 o'clock on this to imagine the future. So this was board will discuss possible future agenda items for board consideration following March reorganization. I think this was just, at a high level, what sort of work quickly comes off the top of mind that we would want to give to a next board should it reorganize. Go ahead, Claudette.
So I would want to address the recommendations of the Article 36 task force group, the reviewing the recommendations of the child care committee and continuing our work on financial policies and other policies for sure.
Great. Anything else, Mary?
Well, I think we'll have to sort out our ARPA efforts.
Oh yeah, for sure, ARPA.
And think about Tracy Hall and other, venues for that.
Marcia?
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think we have to do some serious looking at our dog policies, and I had submitted a while ago a draft for consideration, so I'd like to start looking at that.
Yes, gosh, I think we not all of us have, but we like at least two of us, right? So we should for sure, and whatever public engagement process we want to do in addition to what's required. Okay, anything else, Rob?
Not so much actionable stuff, but I really look forward to working closely with Rod and the new team and making sure that we are not at loggerheads, that we get things efficiently done and move the town forward.
Right, and then I'll say for my part, because I saw Cheryl's hand pop up, we'll when we receive, or if not before, the letter from the state on the need to reappraise, we should be prepared to provide a direction for that as well. I'll get to public comments, but I want to turn to Rod. Any high-level thoughts? You've had a department head meeting recently. Anything immediately stick out to you? Any approach that you as a staff are taking to agenda setting that you would want, to sort of see the next board honor?
Yes, actually, the process of agenda setting and then the time interval between, so if you like, the setting of the agenda and the actual meeting. So I think we're looking at the department heads have begun to discuss workflow within the organization and how that best serves the needs of the select board and the community.
Mm-hmm.
And we've looked at improved communication between us and identifying of objectives and responding as a team to those things. And I think that the other issues that have come up here that I think that are pressing are making some decisions, not just about ARPA narrowly, but the engagement around the use of the ARPA funds.
Mm-hmm.
How to make sure that that's successful.
Mm-hmm.
And to, I think the list was very instructive, but I would say that we should look forward to some detailed discussions about how to ensure that staff are responsive and well equipped to support the select board in their work.
You're reminding me of, I think, the goal we all share, which is to establish more, I guess, meaningful relationships with our committees. It strikes me that with Fielding here, we could make a more serious effort to get a finance committee, and then what that might do for and with the board. So thinking about how committees have staff support, how it's integrated into their workflow, and then like what our role is if we want to have appointees to committees or what have you. And I think that is a huge lift and major diplomacy. So yes. All right. Go ahead, Mary.
Just one more for our list. Just improving the website communication and digitalization.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cheryl Lindbergh, you have your hand up. Do you have a list for a future board?
Cheryl Lindbergh, 59 Koch Road. I just would like to remind you, maybe it was said, I didn't think I heard it, was the Land Management Council discussion. That was my mentioning a while back. I just wanted to remind you.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, I suspect we can go on and on and on, but I think this is useful to as a place to begin. Pam Smith, you raised your hand. Go ahead. You have a public comment.
I did. Pam Smith, 1445 New Boston Road. I hope at some point the town will turn its attention to the phone system at Tracy Hall. It has been very problematic over the last year, and I would just love to see that upgraded at some point.
Yes, I hate hearing the echo of my voice when I call Tracy Hall too. So yeah,
if the system even works,
Mhm.
sometimes it doesn't. So yeah, it needs to be replaced, and hopefully that's something that can be done in the near future.
Great. Thank you, Pam, for sure. Claudette?
Not on kind of a future agenda. We haven't discussed our plans for our reorganization meeting. Whether or not in the past couple of years, we've done it the day after town meeting, but that's not a standard select board meeting date. So I don't know if that's going to continue this year or if we will be holding off until the following week.
I'm fine with that. If we want to do March 2nd, warn a special reorganization meeting. What do others think?
Yeah, that's fine.
So say again, are you suggesting to do it the day after the election or not?
I think that's a suggestion. Obviously, like we should reach out to see if like other candidates would be available potentially that day, right? But otherwise.
I do like that just because it doesn't leave a gap in case something happens. Because once the election happens, it's all new. So I think it's kind of important to do it very quickly after the election.
Okay, so I'm seeing nodded heads, question mark. And then we'll, Pam, Does that work for you?
I am available that day.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I would like to adjourn if that's the next item on the agenda. Oh no, go ahead, Marcia. Oh, you're on mute. I know, this world.
I'm gonna keep the noise down, and I'm really keeping it down. So town meeting, that's on the 28th, and we're all there on Zoom, yes?
Mm-hmm.
7 o'clock, okay? And then for the second, would that be, because it's a special meeting, would that be 5:30 instead of 6:30?
It has been our practice to do 5:30 for staff. But yes, it's good. But Rod, what do you want to do? You're running that meeting, sir.
The reorg meeting at 5:30 is fine, I think.
Okay.
If that's okay with everybody else. I don't know what their days are like, but
Yeah.
Yes.
5:30 works for me better.
Okay, and Pam?
Here's a question.
That's fine, thanks.
Okay, great.
Is that one Zoom or is that one in person? Zoom?
Zoom.
Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom.
Zoom. Zoom. We Zoom.
Sounds like a song. Zoom, zoom, zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
The law was changed to the end of this current calendar year.
That's correct. We can meet entirely via Zoom until I believe January 2023.
Not that necessarily we would want to do that, but
It's an option though.
it isn't. Right.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
March 2nd, I say Zoom. I'm not going.
Okay, that's great. All right, so this
I
was
move to adjourn.
yes. So there's a second. Okay, great. So thank you for this grand finale and quite a finale it was.
Yes, it was sparky.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Good night with appreciation.
Good night.
Thanks a bunch.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
The recording has stopped.